Okay, we'll start. Adgure Name, Shigadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name, Adgure Name, Shigadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name, Adgure Name, Shigadgure Name, Satgure Name, Sri Gurudev Name.
Para español, activa el botón en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Para español, activa el botón en la parte inferior de la pantalla.
Okay, bueno. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to put on my microphone here. So, welcome to everybody from all around the world. Our majority are Spanish speakers today. So, gracias. I will introduce our presenters today. We have Sukhdev Kaur, we have Harinam Singh, we have Dharm Kaur, and I will do just a bit of an introduction here. We'll start with Sukhdev Kaur. Sukhdev Kaur went to Estonia as a pioneer from the homeland of Mexico in 2004, sent by the city Singh to serve. In her professional career, she was an architect and urban researcher and worked in those fields until she gave birth to her first son. Since her time in Estonia, Sukhdev Kaur has become the youngest lead trainer in Europe and travels across Europe into Mexico. In 2016, she was awarded KRI honors for her service in Estonia. She established the Dharm Kaur School of Kundalini Yoga and Humanology in Tallinn and the Guru Ramdas Institute in Ashram in the Rajama, Estonia. Her passions include parenting, helping mothers in their postpartum, working with Karam Kriya, a system of number awareness based on the 10 bodies developed by Shiv Charan Singh. She is also in the process of creating a conscious, dharmic, forest primary school for children in the ashram. And as a devoted Sikh, Sukhdev Kaur shares the teachings of Sikh Dharma and the Sikh gurus across Eastern Europe, where the teachings are rather new and unknown. So welcome, Sukhdev Kaur. And I also know Sukhdev Kaur because when we were in the last stages of publishing Yogi Bhajan's biography, I had a couple of editors helping me here, Dharm Kaur and Sukhdev Kaur. So they were cleaning up my text. That was really helpful. Singh Sahib Harinam Singh doesn't tell much about his past, but he says, he has taught and counseled thousands of people all over the world on virtually every aspect of human behavior. He was personally trained to serve humanity in this capacity for almost 30 years by Yogi Bhajan, the legendary spiritual master who first introduced Kundalini Yoga and Sikh Dharma to the West back in the late 1960s. He is best known for his passion, sense of humor, and expertise for integrating spirituality into daily life. Harinam Singh is an ordained minister of the Sikh faith and author of Khalsa Consciousness, a concise and clear explanation of the Khalsa spiritual path as laid down by its founder, Guru Gobind Singh. In addition to dedicating a significant amount of time to his mission as a spiritual teacher, Harinam Singh is a practicing attorney, financial and investment advisor, and professional counselor. He also finds time to enjoy some of his other passions in life, including music, art, travel, and sports. And he says, spirituality is not an escape from life, but rather that very thing that gives purpose, enjoyment, and mobility to everything we engage in as a human being. Thank you, Harinam Singh, in Mexico. All right.
I am Mexico.
Bravo. Okay. And Dharm Kaur has a nice, short and sweet biography. Originally from Trinidad and Tobago, Dharm Kaur started her journey with Kundalini Yoga in 1984 in Montreal. That year, she began teaching, had the fortunate destiny to meet her teacher, Siddhi Singh Sahib, Yogi Bhajan, when he visited shortly after the attack on the Golden Temple. In 1989, she moved to Vancouver. There she co-founded the Yoga Center of Vancouver, later Yoga West, and began teacher training program there in 1991. She later contributed to the original outline of the current KRI Teacher Training Manual. She is also a mother, a Sikh Dharma minister, a Satnam Rasayan practitioner, and is dedicated to building community, mentoring teachers, and contributing to the raising of consciousness in the age of Aquarius. So welcome, Dharm Kaur.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Who would like to start talking about how you got here? What was your first experience of Kundalini Yoga? Anybody?
Okay.
Okay.
¿Por qué no? Pero bueno, quiero, claramente español es mi segundo idioma, pero yo puedo hablar bastante. Guru Fata me dijo que la mayoría de los asistentes de esta reunión son hablantes españoles. So yo pienso que no perfecta, pero yo creo que puedo hablar mejor de mi corazón en español. So voy a hacerlo y tal vez vamos a cambiar después, pero voy a empezar en español. Entonces, como Guru Fata dice, estoy viviendo estos días aquí en la costa pacífica de México, en un lugar que se llama Mazatlán. Yo y mi esposa, Kurwan, vivimos por el mar. Eso es muy bonito pasar esta pandemia con la vista del mar. Y ¿qué más? Entonces, yo quiero decir una cosa antes de yo quiero dar mi gratitud a Guru Fata Singh. Este proyecto es muy importante y él ha hecho muchas cosas que la otra gente no está haciendo. So, yo quiero dar mi gratitud a este gran hombre para hacer todo este proyecto. So, muchas gracias, hermano mío. Thanks, my brother, okay, for doing this and por el honor pasar tiempo con ustedes. También yo debo mencionar que de otras dos mujeres aquí, Dharm Kaur de Vancouver oh my God, I'm going crazy. This is the problema. Tengo 68 años y yo a veces olvido mi propia nombre. Sukhdev de Estonia. Disculpe, mío. Las dos son amigas muy cercanas de mí. Y es un honor de mí compartir ese tiempo con ellas. Y yo puedo compartir con ustedes. Si tú no conocen estas dos mujeres, deben conocer ellas personalmente. Pues estas dos mujeres son tan comprometidas a la misión, tú no puedes imaginar. Yo conozco Dharm probablemente por 30 años. Ha sido mi honor conocer a Sukhdev por los últimos 5 años, pero es un honor de mi vida tener gente como Sukhdev y Dharm Kaur en mi vida. Y mis sugerencias deben conocer ellas personalmente. Es dos grandes mujeres. Okay, so entonces Guru Fata me pido hablar de 3 temas. Voy a empezar la primera. So, él quiere que compartimos con ustedes nuestro viaje a Kundalini Yogi y Sikh Dharma, ambos, okay. And después vamos a hablar de cuentos personales con el Siddhi Singh su mismo. And I think en el fin vamos a hablar del tema de como de alegaciones de este año de drama alrededor de cómo esta cosa ha afectado nuestra relación con la organización en la comunidad. So, yo tengo mucho a hablar de cada tema, pero parece como él está pidiendo en este momento, como yo personalmente he empezado mi viaje con Kundalini Yogi y Sikh Dharma. So, well, todos nosotros podemos hablar por like 5 horas porque hay muchos cuentos y detalles, yada, 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 como decimos en Nueva York, yada, yada, yada. Quiere decir, X, Y, Z. Pero just voy a compartir momentos con ustedes. Hay mucha historia por años, pero técnicamente yo asistí a mi primer clase de Kundalini Yoga cuando yo fui cerca del fin de mis estudios en la Escuela de la Ley en Nueva York en 1977. Es muy chistoso, just por casualidad, he recibido una foto de mi madre ayer, fue tomado like un mes de Kundalini Yoga. So this is just para Dani, this is como se dice. Yeah, this is soy yo.
Whoa,
un hippie stoned in law school in the school. But that's como yo, but this is the diferencia, see? So anyhow, en esta etapa yo tenía como 25 años. And busqué por otra cosa, pero ok, en el fin, yo he asistido a mi primer clase, yo recuerdo en 7 de marzo de 1977. Y yo fui un poco nervioso cuando yo entraba de ashram, porque en estos días no fue estudios de yoga, Kundalini Yoga fue enseñado casi exclusivamente dentro de ashram. Y yo nunca he entrado en ashram, so yo sentí un poco nervioso, y la gente con turbantes y blancos, so yo estoy pensando ese punto, entonces estuve un poco nervioso, pero en clase yo tenía experiencia con Hatha Yoga y otras cosas, y la experiencia de clase para mí fue muy, muy poderosa. Nunca he experimentado algo tan fuerte. Y algo sucede muy interesante, yo voy a mencionar que yo quiero compartir cuentos relacionados al tema de hoy día, en lugar de miles de cuentos yo tengo. Cuando yo salí de ashram, yo no conocí Yogi Bhajan. Yo no tenía no idea quién fue este hombre, ¿no? Y cuando yo salí de puerta muy alto, fue una pintura, un retrato, un cosa en la pared, ¿no? Y fue una pequeña foto de él y just un dicho firmado de él. Y fue muy interesante que este dicho dijo, enseña que tú conoces, no enseñar que tú no conoces. Punto. Okay. Esta cosa tenía un impacto a mí. Entonces, chistoso, la próxima mañana yo di mi primera clase de Kundalini Yoga. Y yo sigue esta instrucción, porque yo supe un kriya. Y yo tenía este manual. Se llama Sadhana Guidelines. Fue un kriya. Y este hombre me dijo que yo debo enseñar que yo sé y yo no debo enseñar que yo no sé. Yo no sé, yo di esta clase a mi amigo, un otro hippie. Y hasta este día este hombre es mi amigo y hablamos de este día. Y desde esta primera clase siempre esta cosa ha sido mi brújula, ¿no? Que voy a enseñar, voy a compartir cosas yo sé personalmente y yo no voy a enseñar cosas yo no sé. So, esta cosa me formó mi punto de vista de enseñanzas. Y por eso ha afectado mi cinicismo de toda esta racket de mafia de Cree. Discúlpame, esa es mi opinión, porque a mí, es no mi brújula. Mi brújula no es certificaciones. Mi brújula es no de negocio aprovechar a los alumnos. Mi brújula es voy a compartir, yo sé, y yo no voy a enseñar que yo no sé. Y yo no tengo interés en otra opinión. Entonces yo estoy siguiendo la cosa he leído mi primera noche involucrado con este camino. Y hasta este día yo creo que yo siempre comparto esta cosa con mis alumnos a este día. Enseña que tú sabes, no enseña que tú no sabes. Punto. Es no otra cosa para hablar. So yo quiero, fue mi primer día, pues en 1977. Now, ¿cómo he empezado como un discípulo del gurú? Las cosas más sutil porque desde mi primer día en esta clase de Kundalini Yoga en Ashram, yo tenía un gran conflicto con muchos interiores. Because it was algo muy atractivo. Y yo admiraba el compromiso de habitantes de esta casa. Es un lado, ¿sí? Pero en el otro lado, yo disfrutaba mucho mi vida normal. Y yo no quería perder de ventajas. Pues yo supe que algo va a suceder. Entonces, a mí me gusta la vida, a mí me gusta tomar, a mí me gusta fumar marihuana, a mí me gusta las mujeres, a mí me gusta todo el mundo ofrece. Y yo quiero negociar esta cosa, ser un yogi, pero no necesito sacrificar los placeres de la vida, ¿no? Yo no voy a dar detalles, que no tenemos el tiempo, pero solamente voy a compartir que estos 3 años después de mi primera clase, yo practicaba Kundalini Yoga todos los días, yo enseño Kundalini Yoga, pero yo no he dejado mi vida. Yo estuve viviendo por 2-3 años entre 2 mundos, a mí me gusta, pero el problema fue una etapa memorable de mi vida, pero el problema fue esto. A mí me gustan los dos, pero dentro viviendo los dos, yo no fue absolutamente parte de esto ni eso. Esta fue una etapa de soledad de mí. Pues yo no pertenecía nomás a mi mundo viejo, pero a la vez yo no fui completamente parte de este otro grupo. Yo vivía como un soledad. Y yo supe dentro de mí que yo no puedo continuar esta cosa por siempre. Es que soy griega. No los dos, no funciona. Pues yo no quiero vivir solo toda mi vida. Yo no voy a dar de detalles, pero 2-3 años después, yo tenía una experiencia interesante con Yogi Bhajan. Yo he asistido un curso tántrica. Después he jurado que yo nunca voy a pasar tiempo con él otra vez. Yo no voy a compartir detalles. Pero he decidido que yo nunca voy a participar personalmente con este camino, pero mi karma no me permitió. Estoy en su presencia otra vez, y estoy en un tántrica. Y yo estuve con una mujer, y una mujer quería hablar con él. Yo no quería hablar con él, pero en el fin, estoy cara a cara a él. Y yo no quería hablar con él, pero él me pidió, el grito, tú sabes, él le gusta gritar a mí. Él grita a mí, ¿qué quieres tú? Me estoy pensando, que yo quiero que yo no estoy aquí contigo. Yo no quiero estar aquí. Pero yo no dije esa cosa. Él gritó, ¿qué quieres tú? Y yo sentía paralizado. Él está muy enojado y él está gritando de mí en frente de 300 personas. ¿Qué quieres tú? Y yo no pude creer la cosa de mis labios. Yo dije, yo quiero ser un Sikh. Yo no pude creer esta cosa hasta salir de mis labios. De otra persona he hablado, no, yo he dicho esta cosa. Después 2 o 3 años de una pelea interior, ¿no? Y estuve en shock que he dicho esta cosa. Entonces, por la próxima 2 meses, yo no dormí por 2 meses, no por un segundo. Yo no tenía dormida por 2 meses, pues yo fui completamente absorbado en este conflicto. Pero el mensaje de él entendía, there's an expression in English, shit or get off the pot. It's like, da mierdas o salga de inodoro, ¿no? So, like, haz tu cosa o vete. No debes perder. A mí el mensaje es, yo no debo perder mi tiempo. Just no más tortura interior. Sé un sí o vete. Entendí esta cosa. So yo no he dormido. Y finalmente, un día después, 2 meses, it was más como la bandera blanca, más de convicción. Yo no quería luchar nomás. Yo no quería pelear conmigo mismo, no más. And it was like the bandera blanca, tú ganas, okay. Pero la cosa interesante es que yo supe que yo necesito hacer esta cosa, pero por los últimos 2-3 años, he evitado conscientemente cualquier cosa acerca del psiquismo, porque yo tenía este temor. Si yo estoy cerca de las enseñanzas, si yo estoy cerca de Sri Guru Granth Sahib, esta cosa va a atraerme. Y yo no quiero mi vida destruida. So yo no quería aprender del Guru. Yo no quería leer el Guru. Pero now, he acordado de mí que yo voy a hacer esta cosa, pero yo no tenía idea, aparte de los votos. Los votos me asustan, porque los votos va a significar que mi vida viejo va a morir. Yo no tenía interés no más de este camino, aparte de cosas voy a sacrificar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pero he decidido, voy a ir a solsticio verano en 1979 con mi intención tomar mi voto sí. Entonces, de noche antes, yo voy a volar a Florida, yo tenía mi última oportunidad de vivir mi última vida, porque yo supe que esta vida va a terminar. So, yo vivía en Nueva York, so yo fui a un restaurante en Greenwich Village, en Nueva York. Yo me pide por beefsteak grande con ron, con gran cosa de ron. Antes yo tenía de marihuana, cigarro de Habana, todo. Y después mi beefsteak con langostura. La mesera me dijo, señor, ¿algo más que tú quieres esta noche? I said, well, si tú estás pidiéndome, a mí me gusta tener té esta noche. So, por postre, yo tenía ella. And so, en una noche, yo he hecho todo. La próxima mañana, esta mujer me dijo, me pregunté, ¿cuándo vamos a vernos otra vez? And I said, well, probablemente nunca. And ella pregunta, ¿por qué? Y yo dije, well, más o menos porque mañana voy a hacer un monje. So ella estuvo en shock. Sí, and I said, no, it's not, pertenece a ti. No, al contrario, voy a compartir este cuento 50 años después de ti. So, el mundo siempre va a escuchar de ti. Y yo estoy repitiendo esta cosa hoy día. So, yo estoy respetando mi mensaje. So, después voy a ir a solsticio. Y por la primera vez de noche antes mis votos, he escuchado de Guru, y he pasado tiempo en Gurdwara por la primera vez, pero la noche antes mis votos. El próximo día, mañana, después solsticios, ellos dio de votos. Yo tomaba mis votos con mucha tensión y nerviosidad. Y Singh Sahib sentó al lado de mí durante esta ceremonia. Y yo no dije nada, pero solamente a través de toda la ceremonia estoy mirando a él y solamente yo puedo pensar una cosa. Fuck you. That's all. Fuck you. Tú has reunido completamente, has destruido mi vida. Si tú nunca has venido a los Estados Unidos, voy a continuar con mi vida feliz. Y ahora tú has tan enojado, pero it was como prisionero del guru. Yo no tenía, it was like la bandera blanca, ¿sí? Porque yo supe de consecuencias y yo tenía razón desde allá ahora, porque yo regresaba a mi casa en Nueva York. En este momento en mi vida, estuve viviendo con mis padres, ¿sí? En su casa. Yo tenía un buen trabajo de la ley en Nueva York. Yo fui un abogado en una oficina. Yo tenía una novia, etcétera, 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 etcétera. Pero yo no he dicho nada a nadie. Y cuando yo regresé con turbante como un nido de pájaro, pero un turbante, ¿no? Muy feísimo, ¿no? Pero he regresado con algo en mi cabeza. Pero no fue sorpresa. Cuando yo entro en mi casa, yo fui sacado de mi casa. Yo fui sacado de mi familia. Mi madre dijo que ella nunca ha tenido un hijo. Well, los judíos aman la culpa. So, ellos son profesionales con la culpa. So tú nunca he tenido, si tú no sales, voy a llamar a la policía porque hay un extraño en nuestra casa. So now, no casa, no familia, pues por lo menos yo tengo un trabajo en ingresos, yo manejé a la oficina de la ley. Mi jefe dice, ¿puedo hablar contigo en la oficina un momento? Estoy hablando con él, y él dijo, look, yo no tengo idea por qué tienes esta cosa en su cabeza, etcétera, etcétera, y tú puedes hacer que tú quieres en tu tiempo libre, pero tú no piensas en serio que voy a permitirte practicar la ley en esta oficina como esto. Dice, well, he tomado votos, es mi religión nueva. Y digo, discúlpame, necesito sacarte. So now, no casa, no familia, no trabajo, no ingreso. Nada, no dinero. Well, por lo menos yo tengo mi novia. Ok, no novia tampoco. Ni amigos. So, en 24 horas después de mis votos, he perdido mi casa, mi familia, mi trabajo, mis ingresos, mi novia y todos mis amigos. Gracias a Dios porque he empezado este camino en punto cero. So solamente puedo adelante y arriba.
Thank you, Harinam Singh. That's a very good first chapter. Leave us in suspense for a little bit.
Gracias. Okay.
You're doing a biography, right? Autobiography?
That's it. It's tuya.
You've got to write it up.
That's a good story.
Who's next? You're next? Dharm?
Sure, I can go next.
Okay.
Kind of hard act to follow there, Harinam. It's like it's like episode 2. All right, so I was, what kind of came to me, I would also like to thank Guru Fateh Singh. Thank you, Harinam, for reminding me to do that. This is amazing. All of these recorded live human beings, testimonials for the path, for the beginning of this momentous opening in time and space that Sir Singh Sahib, he opened the door and we appeared. And so by his grace, Guru Fateh, you're capturing all this, because it's very different from written. Written is good, and then there's the actual human beings being captured. So I appreciate that very much. So following again your instructions that you gave, I was what kind of came to me is a sort of a journey, and I'll try and put it into synopsis form. And it seems that it's not so much from beginning to the next step to next step. It's more like I experienced the whole path as kind of themes, kind of running concurrently. And it really helped me to be able to just look back now at this point where we're about to make a big leap forward. And it helps me just have a look at, okay, what actually has this path been about for me? Because I've been reading so many stories and listening to so many people after all this confusion with the allegations, and there's so much doubt and arguments and all that going on. So just observing that, knowing it's just chaos, before we have a leap, there's always chaos, and thinking, well, where do I fit in here? Because I hear all these stories and they're not my stories. And some of them are interesting and some of them are like really weird, and they're all really unique, and but they're not mine. And they're interesting and of importance for the people that are telling those stories. And that's really what life is about. So life is about, I was given birth, my soul came into this form, my mother and father called me in physically, psychically, however it happens. And then the guru starts pulling you. The guru starts pulling you to the guru if that is your destiny. And there's a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of very interesting plot lines in the path. So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, because there's two islands really, and it was it was a British colony at that time. So I was born as a British citizen, and that's one of my themes is empire. And the current empire on the planet, the closest thing to empire, is the British Empire. It's officially not an empire. It looks like a commonwealth and so on, but it was the next evolution from the British Empire. British Raj, it was called. And so that all the main countries that I've lived in that have had significance to me have all were or are British colonies. One is Trinidad and Tobago that I was born in. And then I moved to Canada, which had been another British colony. And then I ended up working in Nigeria for 2.5 years, kind of like a Peace Corps. It's called CUSO here in Canada, but kind of like the Peace Corps where you go and volunteer after college. So I went there for 2.5 years, and that used to be a British colony. And then, and then after I came back from Nigeria, I was in Nigeria, after I came back, I got in with the Sikhs, which India had been a British colony. So I was very knowledgeable about the British mentality, the British way of governance, the British, how it connected with all of the colonies, how it incorporated it and became a greater whole. So part of it is the concept of empire, the concept of sovereignty. When I left Trinidad, I was 9 years old. My family moved to Canada when I was 9. And just before I moved, Trinidad had declared its independence. Or not declared, there'd been a process, of course, but it was finalized. The independence of Trinidad was finalized in 1962. And then we moved to Canada in 64. And then right after we moved to Canada in 1965, the Canadian flag, the new Canadian flag was finalized. Because a few years later, for the 100th anniversary of Canada, there was the Montreal World's Fair. And we had this amazing, I was like right next door, and I went every day with my brother. We took a bus, I was 12 years old, and we went to this international fair. All these countries from around the world gathered and created these magnificent pavilions. And we visited all these countries. And so this has been another theme in my life, is this international cooperation. International, when I was in Trinidad, all these different ethnic groups and backgrounds and immigrants come together and live together in a kind of a harmony. We figured it out, how to live together in a small space and without conflict, and also to create the new forms with a lot of contentious bargaining and dialogue and talking, but jump to the new forms without violence, without breaking apart, but with a lot of like this, contentious actions. So part of it was in Trinidad with the independence from Great Britain. Then I moved to Canada, and there had been huge fights over the flag, discussions, and then later on with the repatriation of the Constitution. That happened in the 80s, the early 80s, 1982. Canada repatriated the Constitution from Great Britain, and that declared sovereignty, the final step in sovereignty for Canada, because the Constitution was still in Great Britain. Even though Canada was a separate country, legally, the paperwork was with them. So we wrote our own paperwork and we became a separate country. So these themes have been consistent in my life. And that's how I always relate to things. I always like see the bigger picture. I always see the bigger picture, and then it's my life. And then the bigger picture, and it's my life. So in the middle of all that, I'm in Montreal, going to school, just like a regular person, having a regular life. And I had no interest in spirituality. I was raised Catholic, and my mother was very Aquarian. So I slowly drifted away. I actually informed her when I was 13 years old that I didn't want to go to church anymore. And that was very radical, just to tell her that I don't want to do it anymore. And she was really cool. She was just said, okay, it's the way it is. And then she was not that much into it, but it was something to do every Sunday. So my father was not related to the church. So my whole concept of spirituality was just what the Catholic Church gave me. And I didn't have a drive to find a path or a drive to find a teacher. It was not even a concept. And I was just sort of being me, just living my life, like whatever life brings you, you deal with it. So each of us has our own themes. Harina was talking about a lot of fighting. I didn't have the fighting thing. I had this kind of, okay, this is next, and this is next, and then keep seeing the bigger picture and then incorporating it. And so I ended up, I went to Nigeria for 2.5 years. And that was kind of my introduction to real spirituality. Live spirituality. It was not in Canada. Even though there was a lot of, I lived in a French-Canadian Catholic province, but I didn't really relate to the Catholics. So I went to Nigeria, and there was Islam. I was in northern Nigeria. This is before the internet. I didn't even know where Nigeria was. They were posting me there for 2.5 years. I had to look it up on a map. And then it was Islam, like deep Islam. They have an imam walking around. It was, and they have these mosques, and they have calls every day from the tower, the minarets. And I had no clue I wasn't even that interested in it. It was kind of like, okay, that's there. Meanwhile, everybody in the little town I lived in was Muslim, everybody. But, coming from the West, we have this kind of attitude that if it's not directly me, it can't be that important. It's sort of interesting, but it's not really affecting me. It's like you could say it's kind of like a colonialist attitude or something. So it was interesting. And, and I could only learn about it because there's no internet by interacting with the people. So through the interaction with the people in the town, and we became friendly with some people and so on, we learned about what Muslim customs were and what it was all about. It was fascinating. And bottom line, they were like the friendliest people I've ever met in my life. They were so open and so willing to serve. And I learned a lot about hospitality, true spirituality, like how to be with people, how to be kind, how to share, how to serve. I learned from these Nigerians in northern Nigeria. And the school I was teaching at, it was a women's training college. So I was teaching. And prior to going to Nigeria, I was also teaching. I was in the Armed Forces Reserve. So my whole past life of all my military careers, I revisited. And then I was teaching there too. And then I was teaching in Nigeria, these girls in like a secondary school, how to be teachers. I was teaching them how to be teachers. I had never studied, I studied biology in university as sciences. But you were hired as a student and you weren't given any training, and then you were sent overseas to heal the world, right? That was the concept in the 60s and 70s, is that we're going to save the world. Well, I got over there and realized, well, that's just BS. We're not saving anybody. We're actually ruining their lives, because we're taking away the farmers from the land, because nobody wanted to be farmers. It was so hard farming. It's like just below the Sahara. So it's very dry, very hot. And they have these hand hoes, and that's how they do their farming. So everybody just wanted to get some reading and writing. They didn't even need to pass. Most people failed, never passed high school. But if they just could be a little literate, they could get a job in the city and get money, then have a TV, then have a life and a car. And then they would never have, well, not a car necessarily, but have a different kind of life where they would never have to farm. And within a few years, Nigeria lost its food security and started to have to import food, import rice from Indonesia, ridiculous things. And we had these half-literate people, because they really weren't, the school system was horrendous. And we were participating in that. We were participating in this disastrous experiment. And the reason they wanted people to come over is because of all the oil. Nigeria was one of the largest oil producers, and they were rich, really rich. But of course, all the money was getting skimmed off the top. So there we were. Then I come back, and right after I come back, within a couple of years, I'm in the ashram. I hit my Saturn return at 28, and all of these themes came together, and I ended up doing yoga at the Montreal ashram. And it was kind of a journey. I was taking hatha yoga with another friend. The teacher had both her legs broken in a car accident. We didn't like the substitute, so we looked for any other yoga, and the only other yoga, there was like nothing happening during that time. Some hatha yoga in the YMCA, and then Kundalini yoga, one class in the ashram in Montreal, a small ashram, and never heard about it. I also thought it was a cult when my teacher opened the door, and I saw, oh my God, what is this? It's a cult. I was freaking out for my first class. And the only reason I went back for the second class, because classes with the ashram, was because my friend who I was with, she couldn't care less. She didn't think anything about the turban. So that was how I started, by taking classes at the ashram. And then Sri Singh Sahib came to visit there. We had White Tantric. And then I ended up I actually moved to Toronto first, got married. Then with my husband, we moved to Vancouver. And all of those were like big journeys along the way. And then the Montreal ashram was collapsing at that point. Lots of people were leaving. So I tend to I come into something, this is another theme, and then I'm part of the transition. I'm like a transition person. I come in, I participate, then it all shifts. So it has to do with, I'm calling it forms, creating new forms. I go to Vancouver. Again, there's a minimum Kundalini yoga happening there. There was one teacher teaching 2 classes a week at the converted garage behind somebody's house. And that was they had just made it into a little Gurdwara, like this building in the backyard of Guraj Kar's house. That was the Gurdwara. They had active, huge Kundalini yoga in the 70s with Guraj Kar's first husband. He's quite famous. And he started these amazing Unity for Men conferences where he brought in these really big new Age teachers like Buckminster Fuller and these Islam Sufi teachers, and I can't think of all the names right now. Guru Fatah Singh, you probably know more, but it was spectacular conferences in the 70s. And then that all collapsed. He ended up leaving the Dharma. And then it all went just to 2 classes. Meantime, Guru Rajkar had started a massive connection with the Punjabi community. And through her kirtan and through her outreach, we had this massive 3HO and Punjabi Sikh community confluence. And she was a key part of that. So that was all built up already, but Kundalini Yoga was like this tiny little seed. So when I arrived, I just knew I had to teach, but where? Because normally you teach in an ashram. So I started to teach in that little, it didn't even have a bathroom. It was just a room that we called our Gurdwara in the backyard. And I started to teach there, and I was like the second teacher. I taught, I think, 1 or 2 classes, and he taught 1 or 2. We had very few people come, but it was, something. And then little by little, because I had a destiny, and so it started to grow. And next thing you know, at the same time, I'm working for this other fellow, Kirtan Singh, who started the computer paper, which was a very unknown thing at that time. Computers had just come on board. And when I first had the opportunity, he asked me to work for him in the finance department. Finance department is like me, bookkeeping, And I thought computer paper, like, okay, so you publish 1 month, like he published 1 a month. So you publish 1, and then that's it. Like, how can you run a business? Just what else is there to say about computers after your first paper? Because I didn't know a thing about computers other than they're there and you put some things in. I had no idea, because the internet hadn't even started. So I thought, what's a computer paper business about anyway? But he was ahead of the time, and he could see it all coming. And he was one of the first ones that ran all the revenues on advertising. And to me, that was a completely new concept. How can advertising pay for everything? Well, he already knew about that. So that was all new. And then as I was within, that year, he said, hey, Dharm Kaur, do you want to start a yoga center? And I thought, yeah, why not? But we don't know yoga centers anywhere, just like Harinam was saying. You either taught at a YMCA or at a college, university, or that's it. There's no yoga centers. So there was a space, an office space next door to where the offices were for the computer business. And he said, well, just rent that. And your office can be there as well, because we were starting to expand. We needed another office space. So across the hall was another office space. And I was there with my desk and my computer. In the morning, we had yoga classes. Then I had my job. And then we put the screen. And then in the evening, we had yoga classes. But it was all the same space. So it was partially a yoga center and partially my desk. And so we started like that, and he funded the whole thing. He paid the rent, and he taught a class. I taught a couple of classes, and we had a very small segment at that time, and people volunteered to teach. So we had like a schedule, and he advertised in the computer paper. That's where he advertised, and the local papers, the New Age papers, and people started coming. And this was like unheard of. Nobody knew what yoga was. This was like 1990. And they would call up, because I was like the manager, the teacher, the everything. So I answered the phone too. I stocked the store. The store was like a couple of shelves. And so people just started coming, and it was the time. And next thing you know, the following year, one student asked me, could I teach her how to be a teacher? Teach her how to be a teacher. And I said, oh, yeah, come later. So she came later, and I gave her a 2-hour prep, on how to be a teacher. I said, okay, now you can teach. And so she was the first. So she started, I don't know, I guess she did 1 class or something. And then a couple other people, somehow the word got out, and then all these 8 other people wanted to be teachers. So I couldn't just do the same thing with them. So I just made up a course. I had a 2-month course. I just made it up. And they were the first teachers. And we didn't have certification or anything because there was nowhere to go and teach. Where do you teach yoga? It's like Kundalini yoga, it's like there's no certifications, nobody knows about it, there's no internet. And so mostly they just wanted to learn how to do it and go deeper into it. And then it started to grow. Then more people wanted it. So year after year after year, they started to grow, and I got better at it. And I started to put a manual together. And another fellow in Portland, Siri Amrit, I don't know if you know him, Harinam, he and I did a cooperation. Somehow we got together and we were like-minded souls. And he had a few notes from Guru Charn's course on some kind of training. And it was kind of like a secret operation that he allowed me to copy them. And I started to create a manual to develop this teacher training, because I just looked in some yoga books, and I had some notes from a teacher in Montreal, my first teacher, and she gave me her notes. So I just kind of pieced things together and started this ball rolling. And then Guru Charn came at one point, and this was just before IKYTA started, and we negotiated with him to get certificates for ourselves and to get grandfathered in. We just talked to him about it, and we had that happen. And then next thing you know, it's like this official IKYTA thing happening, all these certificates. And so that happened for a while. And then the official manual, Guru Rajkar got the contract. I think it was about 99 or something. And she got the contract.
We're jumping away. This is a good introduction. So basically you were part of two pioneering movements, right? The computer movement,
the computer paper,
computer media.
And the yoga center. That was another thing, is that the concept of a yoga center, like where the consciousness, consciousness left the ashrams in India, and it had to jump somewhere. So it jumped into ashrams here, but then it jumped into yoga centers.
Right.
And now we have to create a new one because yoga centers are not viable anymore because of the whole COVID situation.
Yeah. So there's a lot of
our new form is coming.
A lot of pioneering going on.
Yeah.
And you're still around doing this pioneering stuff with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know what the next step is, but I know I'm part of it because that's what I do. Whatever I do ends up being the new thing, whatever that thing is.
Very good. Keep an eye on that lady.
Oh, wait, one more important thing is that when we started the yoga center, a few years later, we brought in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. That's what my whole point about Guru Rajkar and the Punjabis. That was huge. So we physically brought the Sri Guru Granth Sahib in for Gurdwaras, and then when we moved into the final location where it is now, we actually built a Gurdwara in the yoga center. And I feel that was critical because that's the next step for Raj Khalsa, Raj Yoga, which Harinam is downloading.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let's go to Estonia. ¿Cómo está?
Satnam.
Satnam, because you're from Mexico. You could speak
I'm from
Spanish.
Mexico.
You could speak either. Or Estonian, huh?
Yeah, but we don't have an interpreter for that.
No, we better not do Estonian.
Yeah.
Poor Liptakar, she would be stuck.
I'll do English and yeah, funny. Harinam, I never heard you so well speak English. Spanish, but it was such a joy to hear you. Why haven't you ever spoken to me in Spanish? Now I know. Okay. So sorry, my voice is not very well today. But I'll do my best. Thank you, Guru Fatah, for this wonderful, wonderful series of talks. I've been enjoying them so much. And I think, this is one of the best things that has come out of this crazy year, that we've been coming together and people like you that have got great ideas and really, this is so inspiring to hear everybody from around the world. So thank you. So I don't know where to start my story. It starts in Mexico. I was born to a Catholic family, not very devoted, but kind of regular, going to church every Sunday, and not practicing much. But anyways, there was this aspect to me, and actually, like Dharm Kaur was saying, about pioneering and transitions. Somehow my life has always been related to devotion, which is also part of my name, is Sukhdev. So this aspect of the divine is always there. And recently, when the Library of Teachings came up a few years ago, then I was just browsing there, and I found out that the day of my birthday in Mexico City, I was born. There is a lecture of the Sri Guru Granth of Sri Singh Sahib, a Gurdwara lecture he was giving in Mexico City on that day, and it's recorded there. And I was like, going crazy with it, and I read it, and I was I was listening to it, and it's a very short one, but I was crying and crying because it felt really like it was a hukam. Everything that he was saying, it was like he was describing my life. It was so amazing. And I felt, it kind of like put together lots of pieces in my life, because I never met him. I never met the Singh Sahib, but I started practicing when he was still alive, and I really felt a very strong bond with him. So anyways, what he was saying in that lecture was about remembering God, and how that's the greatest meditation, and remembering him, and being in love with God. And so somehow, in my childhood, being part of this Catholic family, with my mom, she was very spiritual, not very religious, but she was very, very spiritual. She had lots of connections with all kinds of spiritual beings and the angels, and all kinds of healing. And we would go to a nearby a nuns. It was a convent of the nuns, and they had like a like an old people's house where they were taking care of old people. And I remember going there and seeing all these nuns, really strong, powerful personalities, serving all these people. And I was just, we would go there and tell stories to keep company to the people who were there, part of this house. And all I could see was like, I was looking at the nuns, how they were working and how they were serving and praying to God. And we would go and have this mass with them. And and I was thinking, I want to be a nun. I really, really liked, the way they looked, and the way they were like totally devoted to service and God. So that was for me like, one of the epiphanies, that I wanted kind of somehow serve God. And anyways, so I, when I was my early teens, we went with I somehow with my mom, yeah, there was a strong connection with my mom. So I would tell, I would be very, very close to her. And she, and I told her, and I remember exactly when I was so clear, I don't know where I got this from, but I told her, I want to do yoga. I really need, this is something that I want to do. Please find something. There was, again, no internet, no nothing. And I don't even know because it wasn't even popular to do yoga, in the 90s, and in a provincial town as well. So one day we were on a paper shop, which was kind of far away from our home in the city of Guadalajara, where I was living. And then she, there was a lot of people, It was crowded. We were waiting outside, and my mom was smoking outside. She used to smoke a lot. And she was waiting for me outside, and thank God she was smoking, because while she was waiting, you know, there was all these advertisements outside, and she saw this tiny little paper which said Kundalini Yoga, and then a telephone number and an address. And it turned out to be very, very close to our home, which was kind of weird because we were in the other side of town. And then she took note, and she said, "Hey, look, I found this," because we didn't even know what was Kundalini or what other kinds of yogas were. It was the only thing we found. And so she sent me there. I was a teenager, and so they would drive me to the yoga and back. It was, I think, once a week. And from the moment I went there, I felt this is really what I wanted to do. So and so I kept doing Kundalini yoga for, I guess, about a year. And then I heard from one of my mothers, you know, somehow my story with yoga and my destiny has always been, you know, through my mom somehow. That her friend she told me, you know, she's going to study to become a Kundalini yoga teacher. And then I was, you know, my ego was like, I've been practicing it more than her. How can she be a teacher and I'm not there? And and I was there like, well, I have to do it too. And of course I was, you know, I was living with my parents. I was a teenager. I had no money myself, and you know, we weren't rich or anything. So, and I called them to ask information, and you know, Dharm Kaur from Guadalajara. So so I was, you know, and she sounded weird. Her name was weird. Everything was strange. And this course was so expensive to me that I felt like this is crazy people. I don't know what they want. I don't want to do anything with them. I'll just go on with my life. And I didn't even tell my parents anything. And I just decided, no, this is not what I want. And she kept calling me. And the worst thing, you know, she started leaving messages on the recording machine. You know, back then there was this phone recording things. And then my parents heard the recorded messages. And they're like, oh, you're trying to, you know, you want to study this. And this is, well, that's interesting, you know, and why didn't you tell us? And I said, no, it's expensive. And my dad, who was really, you know, very tight with money, he really counted everything. And he was really, really saving. And he said, well, if you want it, then why don't you go? And I was like, it's very expensive. And he said, well, if you really want it, then why not? And, you know, he would never say things like this. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I have to go there. There was no obstacles on the way. So and there I was, you know, I was with this money my dad gave me, and it was a lot of money for me. And I was going around there, you know, like thinking, shall I go in? Shall I not go? You know, it was, I was like in this decision moment, and I felt, well, I'll just go in and see what happens, you know, and I just kept going. And of course I loved it. So I started teaching in my little community where we were living there. And then I started architecture, finished the career. And then when I finished, I wanted to move somewhere abroad. So, and of course, the farthest, the better. So I'd been in Finland studying before, during my studies in architecture. And I felt, these extreme places are, very interesting, so different as could be from Mexico. So I was fascinated by, all this Scandinavia and these kind of cultures. And then, so when I finished my degree, when I was about to finish, then I wanted to continue studying. And I found these 2 programs, one in Finland and the other one was here in Estonia. For those of you who don't know where Estonia is, it's just below Finland. So next, 400 kilometers to the east, we have St. Petersburg. So that's it. And it's pretty far up north. It's about the latitude of Alaska, maybe in the US context. So the culture is very, very different. Anyways, just, before I go into the story of Estonia, then that happened that the same summer when I finished my degree and then I applied to the studies and everything, my mom had a stroke, a brain stroke. And she was very, very bad in the hospital, and she couldn't speak at the beginning. She couldn't move. So she was paralyzed from half of her body. And then during this time, I received this letter that I was accepted in the university here. And I kept it to myself. And I said, I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going anywhere. I can't leave my mom. And then somehow my father, he found out that I had been received in the university. And then, when my mom was already back home, and they both, we sat down and they said, you have to go, this is what you wanted, you've worked so hard for this, and you have to go. And I was like, I can't leave you like this, my mom. Luckily, I have a sister and she was there, very helpful. So it was my sister and my dad who were taking care of my mom. And so it was, just about one or 2 months after this, after she had her stroke, that I left. And I left in this state of horror that, like, I was so heartbroken about leaving my mom and the family. It was all a chaos because nobody, there was a lot of change in the home, having to accommodate a new way for my mom. She was starting to walk again. And so, I mean, at the end, she, part of her left side, she couldn't use her hand even years after. So it was a very, very difficult moment. And then I came here to this dark place in the world, dark and cold. The culture was shocking. Sorry, give me a second. People were so unfriendly, so unpolite, and somehow, I had my bag, everything was packed there in my bag, and I brought this picture of the Tratakam of the city inside, and this was all I could think of, the picture that was, kind of like what kept me looking forward and not looking back. And when I arrived from the airport and going to this place where I was staying, it was like a dorm. Then I saw, it was driving, it was not a very nice day. And I was seeing this kind of abandoned buildings, old industrial Soviet time buildings with no glass, no windows, all kind of rundown. And I was looking there, and somehow there was this message coming, say, yes, this is exactly where I need to be. You know?
Oh my God.
You know, you see the worst thing ever, and you say, "Yeah, this is perfect." And
Oh, wow.
and so, anyways, this is the very first year I was here in Estonia, and I was studying our urbanism. Um, it was one of the hardest things I could do, because there was, you know, all this stuff at home happening at home, and I really felt, you know, I felt guilt of leaving my mom like this, uh, and and then these people who are not complete, you know, nobody's accepting me, nobody's, you know, welcoming me, warming, you know, it was like so cold, and then it kept getting darker and darker, you know, as the winter came, so it was getting worse. You know, we had 5 hours of sunlight, and uh, you know, it was, I have definitely had not the clothes for this kind of weather. I had no idea how to dress for this weather. uh, I remember even going to the beach, you know, I think it was September, and I felt like I've never been on a beach with full shoes on, because, you know, Mexican beaches, you're always barefoot, and I felt really weird, you know, be walking on the sand with shoes. So it was this huge cultural shock for the first years, and all that kept me was the Tratacom picture. I had it on my bedroom, and the first thing I did in the mornings, and all I could, you know, I had it framed, and it was all rugged because I would take it everywhere, and this paper was like, you know, and that was all I could, you know, it was my thread, the thread that kept me going through this cultural shock. And yeah, I mean, it was amazing. This I survived. I survived this cultural shock, and you know, there's not many people who survive it. I see so many Latin Americans come and go because it's hard.
My goodness. What year was that? What year was that you arrived?
I arrived in 2004, which was the year that they came to the European Union.
So lots of changes there. Another frontier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was so many, you know, very fast changes, because they just joined the European Union, and you know, like, you know, 15 years ago they had just come out of the Soviet Union. So they were catching up with everything, and you know, the small countries, you know, all the three Baltic countries, so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, but Estonia, you know, really put themselves together after the Soviet Union collapsed, and actually they left the Soviet Union, and they really, you know, they really have a very strong sense of direction. So they went into this, you know, IT market, and they're you know, they're leaders in some way, but they're really hardworking people. I guess that the conditions really make it that, because you know, the country doesn't have many natural resources, you know, there's no oil, so they really had to, you know, work on their own resources, human resources.
Wow. Was there yoga there when you arrived, aside from
no. Yeah, that's another interesting story, because I came already was a yoga teacher, so I had no idea, you know, there was not, I didn't even know there was anything in Europe happening, and you know, the internet back then wasn't, you know, very so I had no idea there was even the European Yoga Festival or anything. And about a year after you know, and about, you know, I think it was like 6 months in, I started teaching in the living room. I started teaching yoga to my friends, and then I realized, you know, about a year after, that there was one teacher who just, you know, had one or two, teachers who had studied in Moscow with Kartasing, and so slowly started to develop a little bit of a community there, and by 2008 we formed. I think there was like 8 of us. Some more started, going to Moscow or to France to Kartas ashram, and we we established the association, the Konaniya Teacher Association. That was 2008.
That's the Estonian Association, is it?
Yeah. The national, in Kita.
Wow. So that's a big move from 2004. There's nothing. 4 years later, you have an association. Very
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we have about 200 teachers, in a
Estonia.
country of 1.3 million.
Wow.
It's one, I think, after Iceland, it's the second, percentage of population, which has the highest percentage of teachers towards population. Iceland is the first, I think.
You could make the long time son the national anthem. First in Iceland. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. Great. Thank you. I'm just keeping track. In about 15 minutes, we'll take a break. But Harinamsa, you were leaving us at the edge of a cliff there. Now, you lost your girlfriend, you lost your job, you lost your family. What happened next? Give us 5 minutes.
60 years passed and here I am. That's what happened. I woke up one day and I was 68 years old. That's what happened. And somehow I survived everything. And it's been, there's almost like too many stories. I just would say that I wake up, I'm 68, I'm in another country, I'm speaking another language.
You have a wife.
I've had a great life.
You have a wife too.
I've got a Mexican wife for the last 20 years actually, and I'm very grateful. I feel like I have a life of 100 people. I can't believe everything that I've been through, and a lot of good times and a lot of joy, a lot of tears, a lot of loss, a lot of gain. But all in all, I'll just say this, other than stories I have to share, is that, it hasn't always been easy. This is not actually what I signed up for, which I think is, I try to share this with people who are getting into it, because I think, like myself, a lot of people get into something like this and they have a pre-concept of what this is. Disculpa, y estoy hablando en inglés por ese momento. They have a pre-concept of what this is, and and then they try to make it to match what they'd like it to be, and ultimately that doesn't end well, in my observation.
What did you sign up for?
I signed up for getting high.
Oh.
And actually, I did get high. Okay. And then I found out along the way that actually is not particularly what this is about. It's almost like, it's like an available dessert along a part of the meal, It's like, if you do these things, you'll feel high, but that's not really what this is about. And I think that my success in this, and I do feel I've had great success in this path, and I meaning when I say success, that I really believe that I've lived this the way that the Guru intended this to be lived, and my experience matches that, and my ability to deliver matches that. And I think what I try to share with people is that at some point, this is non-negotiable, that you start out and you'd like to live it on your terms so that you get what you want. And at some point you realize it doesn't exactly work that way, that you're signing on to the Guru's plan. And this is on the Guru's terms. And that you can't possibly know what this will result in until you actually do it. So there's no way for somebody even to tell you that. You have to have enough faith that your judgment was good and that you're where you need to be. And then you basically let yourself be molded by it. And so I think that for me, after this, I woke up like 40 years later, I'm 68, but I think that at some point, I honestly just made it about not myself, I made it about the Guru. And I trusted that if I live like the way the Guru's asking me to live, that everything will be fine. And after 40 years, all I'd like to do is to report to people is that everything is fine and that this was a really good choice. And I really, anybody who walks in this path, I would just ask them that maybe whatever you think you want, maybe what it is even much better than that. But you have to give it a chance and you got to give it time and you got to be willing to go through the very, very difficult tests that you're going to be asked to go through that you're not thinking you're signing up for, but I'm signing up for whatever is asked of me. And so the reason I shared that story before about having lost everything in one day and starting at ground zero is that now I'm very grateful that I started at ground zero, that I basically, the whole thing was blown up. And I got, actually looking back, I had an opportunity to be uncomfortable right from the beginning and not try to negotiate this to make it comfortable for myself, because this has not been comfortable to me since day one. And I've lost my desire for comfort. And I like being tested because that's how I've grown. Just yesterday, I was talking to somebody yesterday who is on the other side, so to speak. I don't like using that term, but somebody who's a very different viewpoint of everything that's happened this year. And they said to me, wow, this has been a really difficult year. And I said to him, yeah, I agree. That's why this is going to be my favorite year ever. And so he's going, what? He said, he didn't think he heard this correctly. I said, yeah, 2020 is definitely going to be my favorite year ever. It doesn't get better than this. So what are you talking about? I'm going, yeah, but if you're in it for the test, like, it doesn't get better than this. So this is, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about other people, and I've learned about my teacher, and I've learned about the Guru. And I think this is, for me, has been worth 30 years of learning, and I'm very grateful because, it feels good when the years are easy, but I have no fond memories of the easy years. I have fond memories of the difficult years that I found the strength to get through, and no year has been as rewarding as this year. I'm actually going to be sorry when this year is over, when life gets back to normal again.
Waheguru. Waheguru. Dharm Kaur, any just mini remarks here before we break?
I like what Harinam just brought up about a path, because that's also an interest of mine, is seeing so many people come and go over the years, and mostly go. Oh God! So it's like, what's the point of this? Because my interest is defining and redefining Sikh Dharma, like the ever new incarnations that keep appearing in time and space. And that's my interest. So here I am living it and seeing, well, what is this thing? I really like it, and I like the challenges, but I also love the community. I love building community. It's one of my major interests, is get the people together. Just get the people together, and then something will happen, because they'll feel good. When you get people together and they feel good, something new appears. And so you have to keep trying to get the people together. And this is what one of my challenges is, and it's how to inspire people to get out of their comfort zone which is constantly pulling them. We call that the matrix, their former lives, a Piscean mindset. That's always pulling because they're embedded in it and they have attachments to it. And rightly so. And so how do you help people extract themselves? Because they have to want to do it. And motivate them through, I have to keep being very creative of how to keep motivating people, because they jump out for a little bit and then they sink back in. And then jump out for a bit and then sink back in. That's the ones that I get anyway. And how to get them to the edge of the pool so they can actually get out of the pool. So there has to be, like myself, I have to keep figuring it out for myself. How does this give my life greater meaning? How is this more beneficial than anything else that's out there? How does this solve problems that you can't solve out there through through healing systems, through philosophical systems, God systems, all the other yogic technologies that are now massive? Because when I first started teaching, there was no other competition from yoga or meditation. So everybody came to our center and the class I was teaching, because I was like the only teacher trainer at one point. And so I just got to say everything I believed. But then when in the middle of the 90s, when all these other yoga centers exploded, people had choices and they liked what the other yoga paths were saying. And they kind of drifted from this center to that center to this teacher and, Amma, and, there's so many popular teachers. So it forced me to think more, well, what is this path? What is the gift? What is the juice of this path that is unique? And so it's been a journey for me, redefining, mostly through what's happening out there that's not happening on this path. And that's just kind of a brief summary, because, we have to go through it blow by blow. It's like being in a battle. I have a lot of battle metaphors in my life. But, it's like when you're wielding a sword, you can't be thinking about the cold beer in 2 days, You have to focus on the sword that's going to cut your head, or you have to cut their head. And as you just focus on the next thing coming, everything you need to know, everything you need to experience is right there in the moment. And that's the teaching and that's what, the Sri Singh Sahib being our role model for the teacher, the Aquarian teacher, that's what he did. He was very spontaneous. He was very individual. Is that if you were in front of him, something happened. And if you were not in front of him, he may or may not bring you into his field. You could feel him subtly. I mean, I've had amazing experiences with him, not being with him physically as well as subtly. And he in himself is a whole teaching that one can study his life and learn all the teachings just by looking at him. You don't have to open a book. You don't have to read it through the Granth Sahib. It's like it was an integration in his form of what the path is, but not a Punjabi man. You have to go subtly and you have to feel how he integrated and what he integrated. And I feel that that's what we personally all have to do. That's it for now.
Sukhdev, you want to say a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Harinam said about this year being his favorite. And, one of the guiding messages that the Sri Singh Sahibs, keeps reminding me is that this quote he has about life without crisis is life in a coffin. You may know this one. As soon as all these crises started to come in the spring, I felt, this is the best moment we can have to practice this, all the teachings, and every crisis that I've had in my life is like, if you don't see it as a blessing, then you're lost. You lost the war. It's all about, how you can upgrade yourself, how we can, as a community, how can we grow beyond this and grow together, grow mature into being a complete, that's what the citizens I wanted us to do, grow fully. So I think this year, you know, he's probably very, very happy of what everything's that is happening. And and I myself have very, very many personal and also, you know, in the context of community, many great experiences that have come because of all the challenges of this year, you know, in our community and COVID and everything. So if this doesn't bring us together, then there's nothing else that can bring us together.
That's good. I like that.
Waheguru. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it all comes back to a line of Japji Sahib that Yogiji put on his tombstone. Remember, Ketia Duk Book Sadma, Edida Terida Tar. It's like Alfred E. Newman. Maybe you heard of what, me worry? You know, but you know, Ketia Duk, whatever suffering, whatever abuse comes my way, that too, it's a blessing. Thank you. You know, blessings abound. So let's take a little break. We'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Brothers and sisters all around the world, cling to each other. The chain is His word, and they're bound for tomorrow. The young of today, the ones of the good, His life they pray, and we're all around the world, all around the world. The word of the good begins to be heard all around the world. Brothers and sisters all around the world, singing together, one voice to be heard, and our soul has awakened. God is inside, and we know each morning the Guru resides all around the world, all around the world, singing together, a voice to be heard all around the world. Go the temple in every heart, open to the world. Light eternal, yes, capital heart. His word begins to be heard, singing all around the world, all around the world. Word of the good begins to be heard all around the world. Brothers and sisters all around the world, shape of the blue, the banners unfurled, and we're sailing together. The water's so blue, each heart a harbor, that we're destined to sailing all around the world, all around the world. Ship of the hammers of
welcome back, Harinam Singh. Welcome back, everybody. Still waiting for a couple of our presenters. I have a note here from Sukhdev Kaur about that conference that Dharm Kaur was talking about. It was in Vancouver. It was indeed, it was quite historic. Some of the presenters there were Stephen and Ina May Gaskin from the Farm Commune, Ken Kesey, famous writer and psychedelic authority, Theodore Rozek, Lister Sinclair, David Spangler, Pierre Vilayat Khan, Rolling Thunder, the First Nations leader, Swami Kriyananda, Bernard Jensen, Mishu Kushi of Macrobiotics, Buckminster Fuller, Patricia Sun, and there were more than one of them. He had 3 or 4 of those conferences. So they were historic. Michael North, that used to be known, or Guru Raj Singh, there was another visionary, another pioneer, and also a good networker.
I think it's also the West. I think it's also the West Coast factor.
There's a West Coast factor, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like Eckhart Tolle had to come here to write The Power of Now. Gabor Mate is living here as well, and he's pioneering the whole understanding of the pain of addiction. You know, and the whole concept of integrating trauma, working with trauma, is he's a pioneer in that field. And so there's something about spirituality, but Aquarian spirituality that is conducive because it's California. You know, the whole Haight-Ashbury phenomenon is because of the West Coast. There's some ley line or something happening that encourages that. Of course, that's just the beginning, right? And then different countries and different areas have different aspects to add to that. There has to be some stability. There has to be some development, some refinement. I don't think we do refinement here. I think we just start. You know, we break the mold. But that's not enough, right? Because you could keep breaking molds and the whole thing could shatter.
Yeah, Yogi, I don't think he settled on in the West Coast. At least he didn't say that he settled in the West Coast because it had a great energy. He said he went there because there was more trash in Los Angeles than anywhere else.
but then the polarity will show up, right? So he showed up because you need that much polarity to make a break, and that's what Sukhdev was talking about. Is that, you know, in order for when there's a desire for expansion, you know, the best place for expansion is where it's the weakest. So you want to have a lot of confusion, and so you go to the darkness because the darkness is the weakest light. And because if you have a lot of light, then you can't break it there. Light meaning, you know, a strong fabric. So the dark has a tremendous not advantage, but it has a gift for us. Is that the demons in the dark are fantastic, you know, destroyers, like Shiva. You know, they destroy the old forms. They destroy what's not working. So there's a purification going on. And we need the purification so that we can get rid of all the old stuff to bring in the new. Because you're not going to bring in the new if the dark is, or the old ways are firmly entrenched, as we know, right? You have to like have people scream. They have to scream and run away and freak out. That's like the majority of the way change happens. You know, sometimes people would, like what Harinam was saying, like we'd like the idea of change happening as we like it, because the ego loves that, right? I would like, you know, 10% change once a year, and eventually I'll get my enlightenment that way. But no, it doesn't work that way. It's that because your ego will always block enlightenment because it's the polarity of the light. The ego is the limitation of God. So you can't get God through the ego. Impossible. So, you know, this whole realm of healing that we're working with, right? Trauma healing and so on, which is great, but it's not going to produce enlightenment. It's not going to give you. And that was one of the key teachings of Sir Singh Sahib, is to be you, the individuation, like what Jung started 100 years ago, is that to become individuated is that there's a journey to God, if you will, like you are God. How to bring God into the personal is never going to come through the ego, which includes healing all the pain of the ego. It can't happen because the ego is controlling it. And I mean, that's why we have spontaneous remissions and spontaneous healings, because the body, if you just get the ego out the way, then the miracle can happen. So if you go to Lourdes or you go to some pilgrimage station and you just jump in the river or you swim in the Sarovar, and you don't think about it, right? You just do it. You throw yourself into the fire and you get burnt up, and the fire will burn up all of the trash. And the only thing left is your spirit. But of course, it's very painful. And you scream and you thrash and you blame everybody else. But it's the only way. It's always been the only way. But the modern person, we don't have these teachings anymore, right? Because we're throwing away especially in the West, right? We throw away all the religions and we say, we're going to do it ourselves, which is a necessary step. It's like the terrible twos. When you have a child growing up, they have to first feel some power. But it's a very ignorant power. It's a temporary power. And then ultimately you have to surrender to get the true power, which is really the Guru in you. How to surrender to that. I feel this path gives a container for, and it gives teachings for how to do that. But it needs to be fleshed out. Sri Singh Sahib just gave a kind of a, general formula. Like him walking through the planet Earth was the general formula by telling his story. So each of us, by telling our stories, is adding a subtle strand to the teachings of how to surrender.
Anybody has a Yogi Bhajan story for us? Thank you, Dharm Kaur.
Yeah.
Come on, give us some Yogi Bhajan story.
Okay.
Did you get a letter or something? Sukhdev, you said you had a subtle relationship. Okay.
A mí me gusta enseñar a través de cuentos en lugar de filosofía, psicología, lecturas, pero voy a compartir. Aquí yo tengo en mi área, yo tengo 3 cuentos cortos, pero yo tengo cientos a través de los años, cientos de cuentos, es difícil elegir qué cuento voy a compartir. Pero yo voy a compartir 2 o 3 cuentos cortos a mí relacionado que mi conocimiento que está sucediendo este año. ¿Sí? Que está sucediendo este año. No otras cosas. Cosas me ha guiado a entender qué está sucediendo hoy día en la organización de comunidad. Pero no supe cuando yo tenía de experiencia que esa cosa va a ayudarme 30, 40 años después. Pero claramente sí. La primera es, en 1981, en esta etapa yo pasé mucho tiempo con Sri Singh Sahib, pero él me intimida mucho. Mi ego como un hombre, y por otras razones. A mí me gusta escuchar de él, pero de una distancia segura. Okay? No cerca, segura. Que si yo estoy más cerca de él, él va a dejar una bomba en mí. Voy a escuchar para mantener mi distancia. Pero, en el otro lado, cuando yo solamente quería hablar con él personalmente, cuando yo tenía una pregunta acerca de una cuestión importante, por ejemplo, casamiento, donde yo debo vivir, cuestiones de carrera, como esto. No conversación ligera, solamente una cuestión muy importante en mi vida. Entonces, cuando yo tenía 28, yo fui novato más o menos en este camino. He practicado la ley por 2, 3 años, pero yo odiaba la ley en la vida como abogado, y yo quería estudiar en ser un sanador de Ayurvédica. ¿sí? Y yo quiero ganar mi vida para ser un sanador y un profesor de yoga Kundalini. Y yo quería compartir esta buena noticia con él porque mi ego pensó que él va a estar en favor de esta decisión. Que ser un abogado no es trabajo honorable. Y yo fui un idiota porque claramente todas las flechas dijeron que él no va a aprobar esta cosa. Entonces, yo hablé personalmente de este tema. Y él estuvo furioso conmigo. Y él me dijo que yo debo parar de odiar a mis padres en lugar de odiar mi carrera. Y él me dijo que yo voy a ser un abogado por siempre. Y yo dije a él, yo no quiero ser un abogado. Y él me dijo enfrente de mucha gente, frente a mucha gente, dice, muchacho, tú vas a ser un abogado si tú quieres o tú no quieres. Y yo estuve furioso y yo dije a él, yo no quiero. Y él me dijo, ok, bueno, si tú no quieres ser un abogado, vete y no regresa. Porque si tú vas a continuar conmigo, tú vas a ser un abogado si tú quieres o no. Ahí estuve furioso. Pero en el fin, ¿sí? ¿Tú quieres?
¿Sí? Is your father a lawyer?
No.
No, he wasn't. Okay. All right.
No, al contrario. Pero ellos me presionó ser un abogado, pero ellos no fueron ser abogado. Pero now mi maestro espiritual está diciendo la misma cosa que mis padres. Estuve en shock. Yo estuve muy enojado y yo dije a él, yo voy a hacerlo, pero solamente por una cosa, yo confío en usted. Y él me dijo, yo confío en ti. Pero yo estuve muy enojado. Pero cuando estoy saliendo del cuarto, él me dijo, espera. Ok. Él me dijo, tú no vas a entender esta cosa, porque yo no puedo explicar esta cosa a ti, pero yo voy a necesitarte en 30 años. No me decepcionar. Te necesito. Recuerda esta cosa. Yo okay. Pero él no explica nada.
Wow.
Now, los dos lectores de esto aplican este día. Hay dos cosas. Una cosa interesante es, tú sabes que 30 años después de este evento, tuvimos la ola de corrupción después de su muerte. Y yo fui una de las personas en el centro de este huracán. Y yo pude usar mi conocimiento de la ley, entender de fraude antes de otra gente. Y yo estuve dentro de este huracán de corrupción. Y ahora, por eso, a través de este tiempo, no solamente he tenido oportunidad de luchar contra la corrupción. Yo sé que Guru Fatah, hablamos de este tema hace muchos años, cuando yo fui en Nueva York, ¿no? Y otra cosa es, yo tenía la oportunidad de conocer de jugadores. Los mismos jugadores tenemos hasta este día. Yo sé personalmente quiénes son corruptos y quiénes son los honestos. Pero yo no voy a tener idea si yo no he seguido sus instrucciones. Si yo soy un sanador, yo nunca tenía esta oportunidad, esta cosa. Now, hay otros lectores he aprendido de este cuento, pero otra muy importante es que antes yo pensé que mi felicidad fue, la gente no entiende esta cosa. Yo tenía el deseo en el conocimiento que Yogi Bhajan, Singh cuidó por mi felicidad. En este momento, a mí me cuenta que no es la verdad. Él no cuida de mi felicidad. Pues no como él no cuida, pero la cosa más importante a él fue la misión. And él está demandando que yo soy abogado, no por mi propia felicidad, para la misión, para proteger la misión. So, él está usándome, él está aprovechándome, pero no porque yo soy un zombie. En el fin, es mi opción. Mi opción seguir esta misión o no, es no personal. Yo estoy permitiendo él me usa porque yo creo en esta misión. Es no personal. So, desde este momento he dejado este deseo que él me ama, felicidad importante. Él, es no la cuestión. La cuestión es que yo voy a trabajar por la misión y voy a permitir él usarme como herramienta por la misión. Pero en el fin, la decisión es no de él, es de mí. So, desde este momento yo tomaba responsabilidad que mi felicidad en mi involucramiento en esta misión es mi decisión. Y he decidido que voy a decir esta cosa y voy a hacer desde esta adelante. En esta cosa todavía está sirviéndome en este momento. Es no acerca él, es acerca la misión. ¿Ok? Y he decidido que él sabe cuál es lo mejor por esta misión, pero porque él ha creado esta misión dentro de la misión de Guru Gobind Singh. Ok, segundo cuento muy corto, discúlpame. Ok, en 1993 yo tenía la oportunidad de visitar India con él en un grupo grande. Fue la primera visita después de 1984. Okay, so it was muy política. Yo tenía oportunidad de pasar tiempo con el embajador de Naciones Unidas, tener almuerzo con el presidente del país, tener de cena con el prime minister, y viajar con él, ¿sí? Pero el día más importante a mí en este viaje fue la primera vez que he visitado el Templo Dorado en el Punjab, en India. En este viaje cambió mi perspectiva de este camino. Pero tal vez el momento más importante a mí fue en Delhi. Una día en Delhi fue en Gurdwara. Muy bonita, en el Gurbani Kirtan fue divina, todo fue muy, muy bonita. Todavía él me intimida. Él was aquí, yo estoy aquí, y fue en distancia. Pero en un momento en esta Gurdwara, la música fue tan divina, y él estuvo sentado como 15 metros de mí, o 10 metros de mí. Y mis ojos fueron en dirección de él, y los ojos de él están en dirección de mí. Y por la primera vez nuestros ojos como se encontramos, ¿so? Y fue un shock a mí, porque en este momento él echa de risa, yo echa de risa, y los dos estamos riendo afuera fuerte, por como 5 minutos, como lágrimas, porque estamos riendo tan fuerte, porque el evento fue tan bonito. No experiencia bajo esto, y estamos en éxtasis juntos. No como un maestro y su discípulo, no, como tú, hermanos, discípulos de Guru Gobind Singh. En este segundo completamente cambió mi relación con él, porque desde este momento también ya yo tenía gratitud, él es mi guía, mi maestro espiritual, pero desde este momento adelante me di cuenta que su trabajo conmigo es más o menos terminado, porque su trabajo de él fue llevarme a los pies del Guru. Y ahora estoy en los pies del Guru, y ahora él y yo somos hermanos, somos calza. Es no como él está aquí y yo estoy aquí, es terminado. Y desde este momento adelante, mi perspectiva de él completamente ha cambiado, y como un hombre ama al Guru igualmente como yo. Y esta cosa afecta mi perspectiva hoy día. Yo nunca fui una de las personas, nunca ha puesto él a una plataforma. A mí yo pongo el Guru en la plataforma, y ahora yo no tengo estas cuestiones, porque a mí mi fidelidad no es a él personalmente, es al guru como él quería. Y now somos hermanos. So this is a diferente perspectiva. So esta cosa me afecta mucho. Finalmente, y voy a mencionar un más cuento poco política. Okay? En 1999, él me preguntó ser de jefe de la escuela Miri Piri en India. Now, esa fue una etapa de ahora la gente está hablando de problemas en esta etapa. Pero en esta etapa, él supo que fue problemas en la escuela. Y él me pido ir a India, pues yo personalmente, yo estuve en shock porque yo no tenía experiencia para escuelas, yo soy abogado, pero no, toda la gente dice, no, Harinam es la persona para solucionar esta cosa. So, es muy chistoso. So, I said, okay, yo necesito terminar mis estudios en psicología. Él dijo, no problema, regresa en un año y vamos a enviarte a India para solucionar la escuela. So, okay. So, it's casi un año después, he vendido mi casa, he vendido mi carro, he vendido todo, yo no tengo nada, y estoy listo para ir a India, y él me dijo, cambio mi vida, cambio mi mente. No voy a enviarte a India. No, tú debes quedar como tú estás, y yo quiero que tú trabajes en el negocio de Yogi Tea. Y yo quiero ponerte arriba de Yogi Tea con esta otra gente. Pero he aprendido después. Now, en el fin, yo no hice esta cosa, en esa otra conversación. Pero la cosa interesante es yo tenía oportunidad de ver por qué él quería enviarme a Yogi Tea. Es la misma cosa, fue corrupción en esta organización profunda, pero él no pudo anunciar abiertamente esta cosa, es demasiado peligroso. So él me pidió estar dentro de este peligro para limpiar esta cosa. Pero en fin, he aprendido quién son los criminales donde está en esta organización. Y he realizado como de mezcla de Cree, de Yogi Tea, que yo pude ver con mis ojos. So, esta cosa me ha formado hasta este año. ¿Qué está sucediendo detrás? So, yo puedo compartir miles de cuentos chistosos con mi Yogi Bhajan, Singh, pero hoy día solamente estoy compartiendo contigo que he experimentado cosas con él personalmente, me ha informado que ha sucedido, incluido este año. So, yo tengo una otra perspectiva porque he visto cosas que otra gente no ha visto. Pero yo no estoy atacando a nadie, entiendo estas cosas. Pero yo soy más astuto y yo tengo mucha gratitud. Como he dicho, es no un placer. Necesitaba experimentar cosas muy, muy fuertes. Pero en el fin amo la verdad. Y yo tengo mucha gratitud para él tener confianza en mí, ponerme en estas situaciones. Y espero que él está feliz con mi comportamiento. Gracias, mis 3 points.
Bye, Guru.
Great, that's fantastic.
Gracias. Dharm Kaur, you have any Yogi Bhajan stories? You must.
My stories with the Sri Singh Sahib are more, like I say, normal and subtle and it's observational. You know, I was kind of in the living room with him, spend time in his living room, like in the master's court, you know, he held court. I had, you know, some interactions with him directly, but they were not of the yelling type, confrontational type. It was just more conversational.
May I just say something?
Yeah.
Look at Dharm Kaur. Some of you know Dharm Kaur, some of you don't know her so well, but I can tell you, and you've seen some of it in this webinar, she's very self-contained. She's very contained. She's even been in the army, the reserve. Like she knows the discipline. She's very calm, centered. She's a teacher's teacher, and she's been that for a long time. So maybe there's not so much to yell at. Maybe that's why he didn't yell at you.
Who knows? I mean, I think I was going through the crucible just by teaching and setting up things, and a lot of like what Harinam says. You're muted, Harinam, in case you need to know that. What Harinam was saying is like, I tend to be placed next door to the, you know, the fires of corruption. I tend to be associated with it, working in the businesses, working in the communities, hanging out with the the dark lords. I have a lot of dark lords in my life, and learning the hard way of how they operate and how to see the other as you. Like what part of that is part of me from previous lifetimes? What have I got to clean up this lifetime? How do I contain it without getting sucked in and destroyed by it? So that's been a process. And you know, each one of our lives is custom built. The Guru custom builds our lives to give us exactly the lessons and the teachings we need to polish us up. That's the ultimate master, right? Our Singh Sab master part is polishes a diamond, but then he's just doing the work of the Guru, which the Guru does every day. And that's what we need, our sadhanas. And Singh Sab gave me another sadhana to do in 2001, the year the towers came down. And, you know, I was a mother, and being a mother was very, very stressful for me. I was in my 40s when I gave birth to my daughter. And it was like a whole new career change. And it was crushing. It was like totally not destroyed, but transformed me. You know, in the process of doing that, I rose from the ashes and I figured new self out. At the same time, the teacher training exploded. Both happened at the same time. So somehow when you go through these very difficult situations, then the Guru brings you the next opportunity, which then becomes the next challenge. So the opportunities and challenges kind of revolve around each other. And then I had, you know, tremendous challenges with after Singh Sab passed away. So he gave me reading from the Guru, Sri Guru Granth Sahib, 2.5 hours every day. He gave that to me when I had no time. I was a mother. I was, you know, doing teacher training, leading teacher training. We had a yoga center happening. I had a marriage. Our house was the ashram. And so there was a lot of community activities, a lot going on. And just being a mother, as you will know, those mothers, that in itself is a huge job. So 2.5 hours reading from the Guru was like, no, I can't do it. And so, but I had to do it. I knew that. I know he didn't, you know, he just said to do it. And then I knew I had to figure it out. And so I started, you know, started slowly, and I did patchwork here and there and whatever I could. And my daughter would keep interrupting me, and people would interrupt me. And then I had a meltdown, and I contacted him and said, I can't do it anymore. I'm going crazy. Like, tell me something else. So he gave me a modification, and then he died. And then I realized, oh, I can't keep doing this modification. I have to go back to the original hukum. I have to get up to 2.5 hours. So in the process of the 2.5 hours, of course, it melted my brain, and it reorganized how my thought patterns. And that's how I know, you know, I know how it works overall. I just don't know the finer details, but I know it works. So in the process of all that, I had like a spiritual awakening after the Singh Sab in 2005. So having a spiritual awakening for me was a devastating experience because my whole world fell apart. Just like Harinam was talking about, everything crushed me. Nothing wanted me. Everything wanted me to get out. My husband wanted out. You know, the yoga center wanted me out. KRI made sure I got kicked out. Everything got pulled away. All my money, my relationships, my everything. And this was my path. This is like, I live for this path. I have no other plans this lifetime. And the only thing left was my daughter. And she had started Miri Piri. She went to Miri Piri the year before. At 7 years old, she wanted to go. And that was a godsend because everything else had fallen apart. So I know she was taken care of because she was at the school. And I was so grateful for that. So I really, and I had to rebuild me. And that took another, well, it's 12 years now. So it takes however long it takes. And that's been a journey. And I'm not the same person I was 12 years ago. And I don't do teacher training anymore. And I stopped teaching classes because nobody was coming. And I stopped doing everything I would normally do. And so I thought, well, why am I here? I'm not doing anything. Right? What am I doing? So I had to go into being. And that's where I started to study Eckhart Tolle, because that's what came to me. And I started listening to him. And and from him, he was like the Rosetta Stone for me to understand the Guru more and understand the Sri Singh Sahib more. It was through him. So I see how it all kind of ties together. And and in the process of that, the Sri Singh Sahib is like, he's kind of like everywhere. He's like inside of me. He's not like out there. He doesn't talk to me. Some people see him. He doesn't do anything without me. It's like, there's nothing, there's no object subject separation. So when people start, slandering Sri Singh Sahib or allegations or whatever, it's like, I can't relate to it because he's not separate. I don't see him as something separate. He used to walk on the planet Earth in a human body. And that's where a lot of people have trouble, but that's not my reality. And so I've been learning at this like more subtle level because I can't do anything. And so I have to, like, from the inside, I have to sort of be taught. And he and the Guru are, to me, one thing. And so to being taught from the inside is that life teaches you, and then I read from the Guru, and then, you have revelations and you have insights. And as I'm listening to everyone talk here, it's kind of resonating with some of my understanding of life. It's emphasizing more things. And so I know that this path is a genuine spiritual path because I had an awakening, like I had an awakening from it. And so, and then it just takes time to clean up the mess. It just takes time. So you have to go through the step-by-step integration of your life. And people don't agree with you and they think there's something wrong with you, or they leave you, or some people still like you, but they don't know what to do with you. And so you have to kind of negotiate with God and Guru. What do you want to do? Kind of like what Harinam was talking about, like, what do you want to do? And that's a very different question from the Piscean understanding of, well, your parents tell what you do, or society tells you what to do, or you have a great idea, but what do you, like your personal destiny, what does it want to do? And that's a very different, that's a very Aquarian direction. And Sri Singh Sahib, I feel, is always pointing us in that direction, throwing us into crazy situations. He didn't have to throw me in. I kept getting thrown in. But no, I realized I didn't have one thing, is that he told me and my husband to move to Toronto. I was living in Montreal and I had no job. Everything had fallen apart. The business had fallen apart, and which was an ashram business, like so crazy. And he says, move to Toronto and start a version of that same business there. So that's the biggest direction he ever gave me, to go there and start that. And it was insane. It was not going to work. It couldn't work. He had people working there that didn't want to do it. And I was in the middle of it. And it was never going to work. And so I get put in situations that are impossible. And then something new comes from the impossible.
We were very grateful you came to Toronto. You know why, right?
No.
Oh, because my wife and I had a son,
yeah,
and Dharm was
right,
there, and she did the 40 days. She looked after my wife
right.
for her first 40 days, and she was perfect.
Yeah, that
So
was
if
amazing.
nothing else, it was worth for us for you to come to Toronto.
Yeah, that was amazing. That
Yeah.
whole experience, and I was so honored that she would want me to do it, because like, what experience did I have? You know, I'd never, I didn't know how to do anything, but she just told me what to do. Okay, she, you know, I did my part, and yeah, that was amazing. And a lot of, and that's another huge part of this path for me, is all the children and babies and mothers. And I have a lot of intersection with all of those, and then my daughter going to Miripiri. So that's a whole other stream that I haven't talked much about, but it's huge for me. I was teaching prenatal at one point. I just made it all up. And I feel that there's more coming, more teachings coming, connected with mothers and children and child raising. And Miripiri, for sure, that's huge. Yeah.
And you brought some strength to the Toronto ashram, because, you know, Montreal was based on a crooked business enterprise.
Yeah, I worked for them.
Yeah, when that fell apart, you want to tell the story about? Well, I'll tell you. You must know the story about the phone call. The
Which one
phone
is
call the
that?
City Singh Sub gave Prem Singh.
Which one?
No.
About
Oh, there was a call
so many.
because the guy, he was, you know, I don't know what the technical word is. Harnan would know the legal term, where you run up your credit with one supplier, and they won't give you any more credit. Then you get another supplier, and you run up your credit. What's that called, Harnan?
Bankruptcy.
Well, no, you just do it in a very clever kind of a way. You run up all your credit, you don't pay them. And then you get another supplier, and they think you're going to pay, but you don't pay.
Right.
And you run through all the different suppliers. So he was doing that kind of roulette.
Oh, I think it's called Donald Trump.
Maybe. Anyway, Sri Singh Sahib gave this guy, who was head of the ashram, head of the business, gave him a phone call and said, "You better get out of town. The mafia is after they're going to settle the scores and break your leg." Or I don't know what they he said, break your legs or just kill you.
Yeah.
Get out of town. And so he had to. Last I heard, he's in Russia someplace with my son. Well, I don't think they're seeing each other.
Well, because he was so difficult with his employees, they wanted to join a union.
Oh, there was that too.
And he wouldn't let them join a union, and so the union came in and busted up the place. They physically broke in and smashed things, and I was really upset because they broke my picture frame of Sri Singh Sahib, and they messed up my desk. It was horrible. And so then after that, they shut the business down and went into bankruptcy, and that's a whole other story. But it started to turn physically violent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
was a mess. That was a mess, but we benefited from, you know, there's some beautiful art that was created in Montreal. Which
Dale Kaur. I mean, she was my first teacher. That Dale Kaur, you mean, or Prem?
There were two artists there.
Yeah.
I mean, one actually got published and made books, Dharm Kaur,
Dale
Kaur. But there's another one also who created paintings. And her dad, her dad made
Sakari Khalsa.
He made what do you call it? He made the big shield, which is at
Sakari Khalsa.
Puri, Sakari Khalsa. So a lot of that came to Toronto, and some of it's still here. And so but also you came, and you're a stabilizing force, an inspiring force, and a very devoted force. And then you went to Vancouver, and that went to Vancouver, where frankly, in my visits there, they didn't have any sadhana,
Right, no, there was nothing happening.
Nothing going there.
That's why we had it at the ashram, and then it got transferred to the yoga center. And the sadhana was, that's what really stabilizes a community when people meditate together.
Yeah, you and Hari Singh both went, and Kirtan Singh, you're all doing sadhana, and you brought that to Vancouver.
Yep, yeah, sadhana. Kirtan Singh had it at his house at one point. It went in different locations, but it didn't stop. It didn't stop.
But then Toronto collapsed. No sadhana.
Yeah, Toronto collapsed.
So it goes. Where there's sadhana, there's prosperity. And
absolutely.
Good things happen.
Yeah.
Why good? So there's a purpose. All this moving around, you contributed just by being there. Now you're doing just by your being.
Yeah, I really get presence, and because I was trained to do. I have a lot of energy, so doing feels good. But really, the deeper teachings are all about presence, and the 90% of unknown of us, is the God force, the guru part, and that actually does most of the things. But to see it, you have to have, you know, a different eye open, and you have to feel through the sensory self. So I was given the opportunity through these last 12 years to do more of that, but I had to figure it out. I always have to, I can never, like I never took teacher training. I just started teaching teachers. So I can never take courses to understand something. First, I have to do it. And then it gets reflected back, confirmed to me, oh, that seems to be working. Let's just keep doing that. So it's whatever I'm doing is always part of the next thing happening. And there's no words for it. There's just kind of somebody comes along and says, oh, let's keep doing this thing that you were doing. And then we have a name for it. It was called yoga at one point. It's like how Gurudev Singh started teaching Satnam Rasayan. He just hung out with Yogi Bhajan. And then at one point, Sri Singh Sahib says, okay, now you got it. But there was no words. There was nothing said. And then Gurudev had to figure out a whole verbal instruction and training course of how to teach this thing that had never been spoken. So I have something similar in terms of the instructional realm and teacher training. Teacher training for me is very important. It has never stopped. I do more mentoring these days. And again, I have a lot of formulations that are inside of me. And when it's time to come out, they'll come out.
Guru. So Sukhdev Kaur, you've been very quiet. You've been a good listener. Want to share something with us?
Yeah, actually, you know, related to both Harinams and Dharm Kaur stories, that, you know, the somehow, you know, what we call destiny and the mission, and the, you know, and I'm speaking, you know, from a personal perspective, that you know, unless we sacrifice something, you know, we and we might think, you know, that these are our ideas, that we want to get something done, but when we are in that current of, you know, the greater mission, when we are in service of that which is bigger than us, I feel that, you know, these projects, they're just, you know, given to us. They're not something that we want to do, but they're just, you know, part of our destiny. So it's not whether we want to do them or not. It's just that, you know, it's our hukam, you know, whether we take it or not, whether we realize it. When we realize it, maybe sometimes we realize it too late, or sometimes too early. and things are not ready, you know, there's not an alignment yet, but we know already, you know, from years ahead, that this is something that has to be done. And so, you know, the starting of the community here it has been a very, very interesting process, very hard. You know, the feeling of, you know, being isolated and being lonely in a community that doesn't understand you, and you don't understand even the language, you know, starting from there. And then all the turban, you know, Sikh Dharma part, you know, being always the stranger, the different one. I mean, so far until now, I'm still the only WHO Sikh in the community.
Wow.
You know, that we have lots of Kundalini yoga teachers, but that's not the same thing. And I realized, you know, that what's been helping me go through all this darkness is having the trust that, you know, this is, I was put here. I didn't come here because I wanted to. So, you know, if I connect to that, every single project that I've had in my life, you know, building the ashram, or we're building a school for children too. And it's never something that I want to do myself. I don't know how to do it. I never knew how to build community, but it's happened. All just because, you know, there's a sacrifice of what I want and who I want to be and what I want to do, you know, giving our heads to the Guru. And unless we do that, you know, unless we really, like Harinam was saying, you know, commit fully to the path and forget about our little comfortable life before that, and our our own personal comfort zones that that we think make us who we are. There's no way forward, and I think that part of the biggest crisis we're having, I think that the crisis is slowly dispersing away, that we had in the summer with the AOB report and so on, and before that all the story, that it was because there's no caliber in us as a community, because we're not aligned to the Guru. So only, and I've seen it from community in Mexico and Europe and other, if you just analyze it from the point of view that if there is a strong connection with the Guru, then none of this is of relevance, of who, what, when did Yogi Bhajan something or not. It's not a question at all. It's all about you and your commitment to the Guru, and this is all just part of the test. So it's not it's never been about Yogi Bhajan. It's always been about you, about us. So it's and this is having this attitude has come only from the Dharma side, only from giving our heads, and I feel that if I wouldn't have given my head to the Guru, I would not be alive. I would not have survived all the challenges that were put in my life, and I would have learned. I would have been stuck either death from some of several situations, or I would have gone down the black hole into depression, into whatever. There's 1,000 ways of how we can fall apart, but the only thread that keeps us is having that strong connection with the Guru. And I felt, and this is what the citizens have always told us, and this is actually what we know is the only way we have a thread to come out of this labyrinth of life. So and if we don't trust that thread, then there's no way out, really. It's all a big fairy tale where we're in. There's no reality. There's no logic that plays a part in here. It's all about really being in the heart and knowing that this is the commitment is what helps us to go through, to go out of the Maya. I was reading the Guru a week ago. I found a very, very beautiful quote that he said, the creator first the creator created himself. Second, he created duality. Third, he created Maya. And fourth, and only those who can reach the fourth state are the ones who can see the truth and who can know the truth in their hearts. And these are the Gurmukhs. So unless, we jump that, and we know, from Shaktipat to Sahajpat and all these 3 to 4 from, first chakras to the heart, fourth chakra. So it's all about making that leap of faith into trusting, into seeing the unknown. And unless, it's an attitude to life. At least that's what I've learned, that unless we are in that game, in the play of duality and Maya, we can't get out of the ocean unless we hang on to that. And I find that's that's the whole purpose of everything that Yogi Bhajan Citizen Side taught us, was to break open in that way.
Very good.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I like that.
Thank you. Anand Singh, I've got a question for you. You were and are in a very conservative profession. You were fired. How did you get back into that profession?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I had to open up my own office because nobody else would hire me.
That's great.
It's like, what are you doing anything? Nobody's going to give you a job. You got to create your own job, right?
So who went to you as your clients? Who didn't mind? that you-
It's a long story, but I'll say this, that it gave me the opportunity to see the very bottom of society.
Oh,
And I'm actually grateful for now. I'm glad I'm not seeing it, but it was a learning experience. I got to actually be at the very bottom.
Public defender, is that the word?
Yeah, I did a lot of public defending, yeah. And
Right.
most of my clients were rapists and child molesters
wow.
and murderers.
Wow.
God bless you, man.
Wow. That's
I feel
amazing.
very grateful. It's just another thing to learn, that's all.
Waheguru. And you met Satjeevan Singh across the other side of the city, perhaps? He was also a lawyer. Did you have a relationship?
He lives in New York City. I lived on the West Coast I practiced in the West Coast for 30 years.
Oh, okay. So you went from New York and opened up in the West Coast.
And then back to New York many years later.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. That's a very educated. You know, I drove taxi for a while. I might have seen some of the same people.
I did too. I did too. I drove taxi in New York when I was in law school. And I still say that was my favorite job ever.
Waheguru. You meet a lot
I
of
learned
people.
more on that job about life than any other job I ever had. Loved it. And it was the job that really got me interested in counseling people. And it really, because, you see such a wide variety, especially in New York, a wide variety of people. And also it, it really got me having a lifetime love affair with New York City. It gave me an interest in counseling. And it just was like super interesting. I think that it really informed a lot of my future, being a cab driver, really, in New York.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You see everybody.
See
the
everybody.
Famous and the infamous.
No, I get, because in New York, they hail you right on the street, right? So I'd get like 1 second, like an ambassador from the United Nations. And the next guy would be a Nazi. The next guy would be a hippie. And the next person would be a prostitute wanting to give me service, So you get everything.
Yeah.
Well, in like 5 minutes, it's crazy.
I tell you, I had a funny case. There's one lady, she got in the back of my taxi and she wanted to go someplace. And then it became clear she didn't want to pay her bill. So I started to drive toward the police station. And she opened the door in the back and I was driving. So out of an abundance of caution, I just started to slow down and she jumped. But that wasn't the last I heard of her. She pressed charges against me for sexual assault.
Wow.
That's not the end of the story. I mean, I know another guy. He's a Raghi. Okay, he was the first Raghi from India who came to Toronto, and he started to drive taxi because you couldn't really support your family being a Raghi. So, he had a case where he was in an elevator. There's a common thing. You go to an apartment building and they say, I'm going to go upstairs and get your money. They never come back, right? So he knew the trick. So he went in the elevator with her. She charged him with sexual assault.
Wow.
Totally innocent man. My blessing, and he ended up having to pay some fine for it. He got it on his record. But my blessing, this was in 1978 or something. There were hardly any Sikhs in the city of Toronto. Hardly any. So what do? You go to court. You've got a court date. You go to court. And there's a justice of the peace there. This is totally Guru's grace. The justice of the peace. There were maybe 150 Sikhs at the time in Toronto, maybe 50 turbans.
Wow.
He was a Sikh. He was a Sikh and he knew me and he looked at me and he looked at her and said, charge dismissed.
Wow. That's
totally
fantastic. Wow.
Otherwise,
whenever I'm in New York City, my last camping, whenever I'm in New York City now, And I know most of my friends are actually outside the Dharma. So when I'm with a friend and we're in Manhattan, I always say to them, don't worry about it. Wherever we need to go, we're going to be taken care of. And so he goes, well, what do you mean? Because I'll dress up full bano looking great. And there's always some Sikh cab driver who pulls on over and says, get in the car, G. And my friend who's not a Sikh, he's like, what's going on here? Because wherever we are, we have like personal entourage where we're going. Yeah. And they're like, look at me, what's going on here?
I've had limos pick me up, Sikh drivers. My son and I were in Brampton once, and we had this big truck stop. And it was a Sikh driver, and he gave us a lift for a couple of blocks. You have friends.
Let me say one thing about being a lawyer here that I think is, I hated every day being a lawyer. I hated the profession, but I am so grateful to have been a lawyer. There aren't even words to express my gratitude, because I can't tell you how helpful this has been. Now, it's been very helpful to me this year. I think it's really important to mention how helpful it's been being a lawyer, especially a criminal lawyer, for 40 years in dealing with what's happened in this community this year. Because other people definitely do not have my perspective because they haven't been in my shoes. And I am compassionate about that. But the thing to me is that being a lawyer, and I've been around this a lot, just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. The only thing that's true is that they said it. That's true. It's true they said it. But I've been around enough of this is that I am like trained for 40 years not to react. And I listen, but I don't react, because just because somebody says it, I don't know the backstory. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. I don't know. But one thing I know is that I don't know. That I know. Okay, I know what I know, I don't. And being a lawyer is very helpful, because you hear people say things and you see how they react to things. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. But if I think that it's true, and I've been sharing this with people this year, okay? If I think it's true, it's my opinion. That doesn't mean it's true. What's true is it's my opinion. And maybe my opinion is right, but I actually don't know. That's my opinion. And what happens, you can see what happens with people right in front of your eyes, is that right in front of their eyes, they kind of shift from them understanding that they believe it to saying it's actually true. There's some shift there that their opinion gets shifted into their actually accepting that their belief is the truth, even though there's no evidence to back that up, because there is no hard evidence. That doesn't mean it's not true. It's just that people get hard in their opinion, and they start like when you saw here in the organization, I'm talking like a lawyer now, okay? They're changing allegations into revelations. Allegations and revelations are two different things. Okay, it's revealed. A revelation means it's revealed, but they haven't actually seen anything. Okay, it's still an allegation until it's revealed, but it has not been revealed to them. And so this is what happens. It will destroy people's minds, this kind of stuff. But I'm training this because I've been around this for 40 years. I see how people get convicted. I see how they get accused. I understand the whole thing. And in the end, there are people who are in prison who are innocent, and there are people who are not in jail who are guilty. The system just deals the best they can with the situation. And this whole thing, for them, I'm talking like a lawyer now, I understand the difference between when somebody's saying it's more likely than not, and when it's beyond a reasonable doubt, and when it's absolutely beyond a reasonable doubt. There's different levels of this. And so people have a very low threshold in their belief system. As a lawyer, I'm going to need at least beyond a reasonable doubt. And actually, in regard to my spiritual teacher, it's got to be 100%. 99% is not enough for me. It's got to be 100%. But I've been trained this way as a lawyer. And so a lot of the people, it's like this has been a really interesting year for me. And rather than try to convince people that they should believe or not believe this year, I have really been putting a lot of energy into teaching people how to think with discrimination, how to think like a lawyer, how to process information, because they're not trained to process information. They hear something that's disgusting. And what happens, I know because I have experience in this, they hear a story that's absolutely disgusting. And what happens is they have a pornographic movie starting playing in their minds. And they can't get that out of their head. Whether they're believing or not believing, they can't get that pornographic, because somebody has told them a pornographic story, and now they're playing this story, and their teacher is the lead actor in a pornographic film, and they can't get this out, and they have to deal with this somehow. So they either totally deny it could be possible, or they're going, oh, it's totally, I never saw it, how could I not have seen it? Yeah, but all that's playing in their head is a movie that was stimulated by a story. And that's what happens in a courtroom. People start telling these stories, and the people on the jury, their minds are they're trying to picture this in their head. And once they believe it, they start talking about it like it's a truth. But it's not, they don't know. They weren't there, they didn't see it. So I know I'm animated here, but all you can see the stories I've been telling from my past, even including my teacher getting me into being a lawyer. God, thank God I was trained in this way, because I actually dealt with this every single day, 10 times a day. So I understand this whole process of how to suggest. That's why, for instance, we were talking about the olive branch. This is the last thing I said, because I'm getting animated here. Okay. So to me, I didn't have any big reaction to it, because I saw reports like this every day when I was a lawyer, because some of my clients were alleged child abusers, and they probably did do it, okay? But I saw a lot of these reports. That report was very similar to other reports they said, and I didn't have a problem with it, because it is what it is, okay? It's not a courtroom. It's something else, okay? I'm not even criticizing it. It is what it is. But one thing that I saw, because I read the report, okay, not to criticize it, just to understand the things that other people don't understand, is that the questions they were asking people were leading questions. Okay, now I understand this, I'm a lawyer, so there's a way to ask a question so you get the answer you want. And I saw how they were using that. And I'm not even criticizing them, because it is what it is. But if that was a courtroom, they wouldn't have been able to ask those questions, because the judge would have said, that's a leading question. You're looking for the answer you want. Like, people were being called. They told me people were asked, did you see any of these orgies? That's a leading question. If you ask somebody, what did you see? That's okay. But if you're like you're like looking for an answer. That's a leading question. That's absolutely would never. And there's all these kind of things that happen, but it is what it is. Those kind of reports are what they are. And so I just, again, saying, like, being that I was a lawyer, I understood everything that was happening right from the beginning. And this started 15 years ago. It didn't start this year. People don't understand this, is that it's like the US national elections. It's about demographics. And the majority of the people now involved in this community want something. And to get it, I understand they're going to have to remove the male authority figure from this. And they're going to have to remove the Dharma. In the end, people are blind. For them to get what they want, for this organization to be what the demographic majority wants, you're going to have to remove the spiritual teacher, and you're certainly going to have to remove the religion. And that's what this is about. And so, again, I'm just really thankful, because a lot of the things that my teacher asked me to do, including being a lawyer, kind of gave me the understanding of how to view these things even before they happen. And so this is so interesting. And that's the last thing I'll say, other than, thanks again for having this thing, because I think one thing that Guru Fata that you're giving people opportunity to do is kind of just to hear things from another perspective. And none of these, I mean, I know Dharm, I know Sukhdev, we're not idiots. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're not like psychological deniers or anything like that. We're intelligent people. And what we're talking about here, I think, deserves to be heard, because we're not in groupthink. I know these two ladies individually, and we're all very individual thinkers, and we're not zombies. But we've had a lot of time to think about these things. And so I'm glad that the three of us who have this much experience have the opportunity to share our perspective with you. So I talk too much. I'm from New York. I can't help myself.
You're a cab driver. You got to talk. No, you're beyond that. No, thank you. And I think not only us who are here and the handful who are attendees are appreciating this. I think people in the future are going to take this recording and also appreciate this. It's
can we
it's a
just
yogic exercise. I just want to say briefly, it's a yogic exercise too, to analyze your thoughts. You remember manas, you have a raw perception. Buddhi, you categorize it, you put some name to it. Then ahamkar, you have a person, you develop a personal relationship. What is that phenomenon related to me? And then you can take it very personal and say, that's my toast, or that's my teacher, or that's my prostitute, or that's my whatever the case may be. Mine. And then the emotions get involved. So this is in law, it's in psychology, and it's in daily life.
Fantastic. I just thought we could have a couple of words about lineage, because Harinam has written a book to start downloading, to anchor this Khalsa consciousness that's coming. So a book is a good thing because it makes it real, and it's very simple, and it's like the way it is. So we have that started already, and now we need to flesh it out, and we need a lot of input. And so to have a lineage or legacy, lineage and legacy, it doesn't just kind of like you started bringing in the mind, Guru Fata Singh. So in the teachings of yoga, you have antar, you have an essence that wants to materialize, and it has to go through an 8-step process to arrive at sotantar, to be able to come into form. It's the limitations get stronger and stronger. The same with a lineage or a legacy. It has a form, and a form has a particular structure, and the structure needs a guardianship. Otherwise, it's like I talked with Harinam about this a while back with the male and the female. And so the male is you could say Guru Gobind Singh or the Guru Granth Sahib or whatever the academic discussion is, but you need a guardian so that the female can flower. That's the whole idea of polarity of male and female in the marriage, that you have the protection and then you have the flowering, and they have to go together. So in order for this path to flower, so we have the flowering of the Khalsa, which I think Sri Singh Sahib says is like 2038 or something. We need to have the form, which is the male. The male produces the form and the protection for the form. So that's what the master traditionally does. In an ashram, you have a master. For a lineage, you have a master. You have a guru, you have a swami, you have a rinpoche. They're holding the earthly form for the lineage. And traditionally, it's just one person in the Piscean age. But in the Aquarian age, we have a different kind of protection that is needed, and we're just figuring it out. And I think this is where the Khalsa comes in, is that you have to have a mastery space. The mastery means that you are merged with the path. So you and the path are one thing. And so then the guru can download through you. And so Kundalini Yoga cannot be taught if there's no master. You can teach the trappings of Kundalini Yoga, you can teach the movements, and you can teach the technique, but it cannot deliver the potency without the master. because it's just like, like a sloppy meal. You cannot have, you can try and follow a recipe, but if you don't know how to follow a recipe and the recipe doesn't have the mastery, has not been figured out properly, then the meal won't nourish you. It'll have the same ingredients, but it won't nourish you. It won't even taste good. And so the refinement of this path comes through the mastery, and then that is what holds the path. And so this is what Sri Singh Sahib challenged us to do, was to serve the master and become the masters. It takes a whole lifetime, and you're never finished being the master. It's not like the master is just one person. It's a constant digesting of your own lineage and your own samskaras, that you continue the master-student polarity your whole life. But we have to do it together. We have to do it in like a Khalsa formation. So just taking teachings and taking out Yogi Bhajan, it's not going to have any potency. It will fall apart because there's no sustaining structure. The supports are not there. So, let it roll, let the movie roll, but it will fall apart. So as that movie is happening, that we want to remove the master or remove part of the master, which is more ridiculous. We're going to take part of Yogi Bhajan in and part of him out. Like what? It just can't work. So concurrently, we have to continue to protect this new substrate. It's a new like scaffolding we have to build, which is the steel of the mastery of the path. And that has to be very individual. Each person has to do it and then come together. And when we come together, that's the Guru. That's just, yeah.
Vaheguru. It reminds me, there are kinds of delusionary thinking. For example, there's a concept that consciousness can be generated by internet or by synthetic technology, right?
Yeah, it's impossible.
We can create consciousness, but we're not recognizing that consciousness is a facet of human being. It does not exist outside of human being. It is a facet of human being. In the same way that some people think that, this is coming back to your point, that yogic technology can exist apart from a mission. Yogic technology exists to serve a mission. Harinam was talking about a mission, or you can call it a path. And a master is an exemplar, an embodiment of excellence on that path, in that mission, and for that matter, of human consciousness.
And is the guarantor of integrity. That person is the guarantor. And if you don't have integrity means precision so that it works. And if you don't have a guarantor of integrity, which I'm calling a protector, then it starts leaking like crazy. It leaks because everybody has their idea of what should happen. Maybe I'll tune in, maybe I won't tune in, maybe I'll have a head covering, maybe I won't, maybe I kind of teach this Kriya, maybe I'll include something else. It's gone. The potency is gone because it's a very precise form. And at some point, it's not that you can't change a Kriya, because sometimes you have to modify a Kriya according to the students that are in the class, if they're in a wheelchair or whatever. But the modification of the Kriya has to come from the golden chain, not from your idea. And that's a very, very different way of operating. But you have to continually bow to the original guarantor, who is our link in the golden chain, which is the Sri Singh Sahib. So if you can't begin there, you can't build on it. Like, we're next in the golden chain, of course. But if we're not bowing to what gives us our integrity, we don't have any integrity either. Because integrity flows through that legacy, that lineage. It's not ours by ourselves. By ourselves, we cannot have full integrity because we have a mind that can go crazy anytime. So we cannot, the Sri Singh Sahib was the last of his kind, and he knows that. He was part Piscean, part Aquarian. But he came from a lineage himself, which now is finished. So no more human form, just like Guru Gobind Singh, no more human form. And so what's next is, we don't know. It's like when Guru Gobind Singh created the Sri Guru Granth Sahib as Guru, that was like mind-blowing. Even today, many Sikhs do not understand that that is a living Guru. Like, it lives, co-creates with you. It's not just by itself, it's a Guru. It needs you to be the Guru with it. So we have to bring a similar concept, or like similar and radical. You have to create that out of nothing. Like, we can't imagine it personally. So together, it'll come.
You know, there is a common consciousness. I recall, like, sometimes I've spent time with Sikh intellectual academics, and there was a term they were kicking around in the 90s, the post-Guru period. And I wrote a whole article. Yeah, I said, my Guru is not a post. My Guru is the living Guru, Sri Guru Granth Sahib. But that's the mentality. I think they've shut up about that now, but that is definitely a mentality out there. If you don't have an exemplar, let's say like the Siddhi Singh Sahib, or at least some stories of exemplars that you can relate to, then you're kind of lost. You're a consumer.
You can't
consumer
do it.
in a consumer culture.
So we need a new thing that has to come in with which Harinam is intuiting, not just him, but it's like it has to arrive from when we sit together as Khalsa. Khalsa means individuating in your own commitment, and then when that all comes together, it's the Guru. It's not a group. It's the Guru. Because in a Piscean, we just have the idea of group. Group means everybody kind of loses themselves in the group. But here you maintain your sword-like individuality, and then the Guru manifests itself, which is a whole new thought form. It's a whole new like cloud of thoughts that appears. It's like, when Amrit happens, right? When the Panch Pyare get together, the cloud that forms is the consciousness of Guru Gobind Singh. They are not individual people. It's like Guru Gobind Singh is literally in the room, but held in the form of the five. So, I mean, I'm not saying anything we don't know, but I'm saying we have to do that to get the new thought patterns. We can't access the thought patterns through a computer, through thinking, through journaling. It can only pop up.
Very good. So speaking of forms and limited forms and unlimited unter, this process we hear has a 3-hour limited form. And Sukhdev Kaur would like to say a few minutes. We don't have a guitarist today. Somehow that didn't come together. But Sukhdev, do you want to share a few minutes? Then we'll sing Long Time Song.
You mean share
anything you want to share? Then everybody has about 2 minutes to wrap up, and then we'll sing Long Time.
Right. Yeah. I thought you want me to lead the Guru Ramdas. I can't with this voice. Yeah. No, but it's been an interesting, the end of this conversation. It's fantastic because I think what we're talking about is how we as a group, when we have enlightenment, when we have the highest virtues, which are represented by the Guru, by the Dharma, by the Siddhi Singh Sahib, then this we rise from the lower, the Maya that keeps trapping us always downwards, and our mind, and what were you saying about the manas, and always dragging down, the gravity is always there, the floor is always going to catch us down there, but we don't have this bouncing up energy force that keeps us constantly there, then we're always going to fall down again into the Maya. And I think that's what's happening with our community nowadays, becoming more popular, becoming more the yoga, clearing it out, making it all inclusive, no religious, not one or another teacher, but it's all about everything, and it's it's losing its essence, like Dharm Kaur was saying, the antar, that we are going to just end up dispersed. So the more we keep the focus, the more we keep the alignment, and as a group, you know, we support each other in that alignment. Is the only thing we can do. And I think, you know, this year has been, and I feel, I have this feeling that this is just going to intensify. You know, this is just the beginning. It's not that 2020 ends and everything is nice and beautiful.
I agree.
But you know, it's just starting. So I see, you know, it's maybe a decade or more, but it's a shaking and it's a purifying that we need to go through. And you know, and if we give in to the pressures of time and space, then we've lost the game. So it's all about, you know, keeping the focus, the alignment, going forward and sharp as the sword. You know, that's the only way forward. So thank you. Anyways, and I think these kind of conversations we need to have more, and really, you know, come out of that you know, global community of everything is happy and everything is nice. That you know, we need to poke ourselves, each other, as you know, as part of the community. It's not, you know, we can't wait for somebody else to poke us, because we will remove it anyways from there. So there's nobody else who are bowing to, no authority. So it's all up to us, our responsibility to poke each other. So thank you. And thank you, Guru Fatah Satnam.
Thank you, Sukhdev Kaur. Harinam, closing minute. Can you restrain yourself to a minute?
Oh boy, that's tough for a New York cab driver. But I just, again, I want to thank you personally, Guru Fatah, for your great service to the Guru's path. Though not only now, but over the years, I'm a great admirer of your work, and of course to my two sisters, I'm very grateful. But you know, we talk all the time. And then especially Liftar, big job, Liftar, 3 hours. You're a warrior. You're a warrior. And como as we wrote here on the side, you know, because of all the stuff that's gone on this last year, I personally, you know, I've been on the Sri Singh Sab Corporation board, and as some of you know, I turned down an appointment to continue there, simply because one thing that I really feel coming out of this year is that the direction all of this is going in the community and the organization we've been part of for 30 years is going in a direction that I don't actually relate to. And I'm not filing for a divorce, so to speak, because anything could happen. But instead of like beating my head against the wall and getting angry and frustrated, you know, as Dharm Kaur was saying later, I'm doing something about it. Instead of complaining about it and getting angry about it and getting frustrated, I'm going to do something that's congruent to the way I see things and what I feel my teachers saw things. And the originator of this mission, I believe, Guru Gobind Singh wanted. So I'm really putting my time right now mostly into the love of my life, which I believe was the love of my teacher's life, which is spreading the message of the Khalsa.
Waheguru.
Okay, and so all I wanted to say, and I wrote it in the thing over here, if any, I know that a lot of you around the world, you know, are on this. Thank you also to you for spending 3 hours for us and honoring us. But if you want any of us who are working on this spreading of the Khalsa, you know, which is my life's work, write me at harinam56@gmail.com, and I'm at your service in any way I can. If you want to get the book that I showed you, you can get that on Amazon or my website, khalsaconsciousness.com. So, but that's not like a personal advertisement for myself. I really want to let people know that if you're not happy with how things are, there are alternatives and you're not alone.
Gracias. Dharm Kaur, 30 seconds.
I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. Just repeating what everybody said, and I'm happy to meet you, Sukhdev. I've heard a lot about you, and wonderful
Yes,
to hear your story and see your face and voice. Harinam, a pleasure as always. Waheguru.
Thank you all. Thank you, Liftar. Thank you. You know, the
Liftar,
first time I
yeah,
met you, Harinam and Sukhdev Kaur. But God bless you all. So let's do long time sun. May the long time sun shine upon you. All love surround you. and
and the
the
pure
pure
light
light
within
within you
you.
guide
Guide
your
your
way
way
on.
on.
May
May
the long
the
time
long time
sunshine
shine
upon you,
upon you.
all
All
love
love
surround
surround
you,
you.
and
And the
the pure
pure
light
light
within
within
you
you.
guide
Guide
your
your
way
way.
on. Guide
Guide
your way on. Guide
guide
your
your
way
way.
on. So
Sat Nam.
Infinite Creator, Creator of the Word, Creator of the world, Creator of all this creation, Creator of compassion, Creator of kindness, Creator of courage, Creator of this webinar, Creator of Yogi Bhajan, Creator of Guru Nanak, Creator of all things. We're grateful to you for your creativity and how it can flow through us, for giving us the words to speak and the ears to hear and the heart to appreciate. That we grow in your consciousness, that we grow and continue to evolve through these interesting times by your grace. We live as lighthouses, we live as role models, wherever we might be, by your grace. Satnam.
Sat Nam.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Livtar. That was fantastic.
Satnam.
Sat Nam, everybody.